Acting Chair, Cecily Bedwell. We'll start with a roll call to account for all the members of the panel present on the call. And when you hear your name, please say aye. I understand that Fran Anderson will be joining us at the latter half of the evening to go through the two residential. So we'll start with Mr. Khan.
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Ra.
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds.
Here.
Mr. Sharma.
Aye.
And Mr. Yusufero.
Here.
Wonderful. Thank you all. And my name again is Cecily Bedwell. I'm here as well. Just to start us off, a review of today's agenda. Marta, are there any changes to the tentative agenda as published?
No, there are no changes.
Very good. Thank you. DRP members, in the July 28th email that you received draft minutes of the July 14th, 2021 meeting. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the draft minutes? I'll take silence as an affirmation. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes?
I move we approve them.
And may I ask who that was?
This is Donald.
Donald, thank you. Is there a second?
This is Hyun. I will second that. Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, I think I heard 4. I myself was not present, so the motion carries. Thank you. Now, if you'll bear with me, I have an opening statement to read that gets into some of the technicalities and goes through the design review panel's establishment and protocol. So per Title 4, Subtitle 2, Part 1, Sections 32-4-203 and 32-4-204, they established the design review panel. The DRP was established to encourage design excellence and acts in a consulting and advisory capacity, and supplements the entities reviewing the development plans. The objectives for DRP's assessment include spatial, visual, and functional relationship to the topographical characteristics, as well as the natural and built features surrounding the site. Visual and functional integration of streetscapes, pedestrian pathways, playgrounds, recreational amenities, and parks, streets and sidewalks, making sure that they're laid out in a safe and convenient manner, that parking is a positive design element. Buildings, parking garages, and other structures are spatially and visually integrated and suitable to their surroundings in proportion, massing, and type of materials and colors, signage, and other elements of urban design. And plant materials are selected and cited to define the site, provide a theme, frame views, enhance architecture and street character, etc. In carrying out its duties, the DRP utilizes design guidelines, plans, and architectural principles in the Comprehensive Manual of Development Policies and/or the Master Plan, as well as other specific guidelines and regulations adopted into law. Certain areas of the county were designated by the County Council to require review by the DRP. The panel will provide a technical review of the proposed project. Issues relative to zoning, setback relief, environmental and stormwater management, traffic regulations do not fall under the purview of the DRP and are regulated through the appropriate agencies responsible for those aspects of the development plan. The panel consists of 9 members. All are professionals with practical knowledge in the matters of design. For the purpose of making recommendations on a particular project, 3 members shall constitute a quorum. We have a quorum this evening. The attendance and comments of each member shall be recorded in the minutes, which shall be open to public record and available along with all documents submitted to the panel for inspection and copying by the public. There will be an opportunity for the community to offer comments and suggestions at the conclusion of each applicant's presentation. These comments will also be included in the written record of the meeting. When a speaker is called up to speak, please keep your comments focused on the design perspectives within your allotted 2-minute time frame. If you're speaking on behalf of a community group, you'll be allocated 5 minutes. At the conclusion of the meeting, the Department of Planning will sum up the recommendations of the panel before a motion for a vote is suggested. Recent legislation has changed the panel's recommendation to be advisory on the hearing officer and the various county agencies unless the hearing officer or agencies find the panel's actions constitute an abuse of its discretion or unsupported by the documentation evidence presented. Disposition of the plan will be determined as either approved with conditions, additional review required with a second meeting. Okay, now that technicality is out of the way, we will start with 1726 Reisterstown Road, proposing an office building renovations and subject to the Pikesville commercial review. The presenter for the project, please go ahead and present. The floor is yours at this time.
Thank you, Chairwoman Bedwell. This is Tim Catroco. I'm counsel for Blue Ocean Realty, the owner and developer of the Pikesville Doubletree Hilton. I'll just give a brief introduction and then I'll turn it over to our design professionals. I know you have a full agenda this evening and a lot to go over, so I won't delay things. You've already heard a little bit about what's going on tonight with the Doubletree Hilton by way of the preliminary discussions that happened before we started our meeting. But we have 2 matters to bring to your attention this evening. One involves the renovation and redevelopment of the office building that's associated with the Pikesville Hilton Hotel. It's already there now. We're just going to change it and redevelop it a little bit. And then you're going to hear from the Longhorn Steakhouse. So the first one on the agenda is the office building. Our design professionals at Colbert, Matson, Rosenfeld, hopefully they've located themselves in front of a good microphone. I know we heard earlier that it was a little difficult to hear Carla Ryan and Stu Darley from Colbert, Matson, Rosenfeld. So without further ado, Chairwoman Bedwell, I'm going to turn it over to our professionals to walk you through the presentation. And then, of course, we'll be here to answer any questions that you all might have. Stu or Carla, do you want to take it over?
Yeah, hello everybody. This is Stu Darley with Colbert, Matson, Rosenfeld, and I see that the presentation booklet is up there and the title page for the commercial building renovation. That's with respect to the office building that's going to remain on site. There is also 2 other portions of the office building that will be demolished at some point, and to make room for the some of the pad work out front of the site. So let's go to the next slide, Martha. So this is a narrative, kind of gives a little bit of history on the site. The project has been before the DRP on several occasions, starting around 2019 when we did the bank pad, which was Pad C, and then there was additional meeting held in 2020 for a master plan that included all the pad sites to some level. We also did Pad A, I believe, in 2020 as well. This particular meeting is for the office building that's going to remain, that's going to be renovated. And I know Michael Blake with Mosley Architects is going to talk a lot about the architecture, but we'll save that part for later. I guess we can move on to the next slide, Martha. Thank you. So this is an aerial that gives some context to the site location with respect to the Beltway and Reisterstown Road. We're at the intersection there, right at the tip of the commercial revitalization zone, which brings us here tonight. The red dotted circle indicates the office building that is going to remain. The hotel is behind it, just to the left of that circle, and the pad sites will be occurring between Reisterstown Road and where the office building currently sits. It also gives some context for some of the neighboring properties and how much development is existing adjacent to the site and across Reisterstown Road. There is a residential subdivision to the bottom of the slide, which is the Pomona subdivision. Next slide. This is the zoning map. Currently, the site is owned BMCCC generally across most of the area of the site. It's about a 10.5 acre site, and most of it is the BMCCC zone. There is a sliver of DR16 that does not negatively impact the property. So that's just the zoning map from the county website. Again, the site is dotted with the circle, and I guess we can move on to the next slide. So this,
Stu,
this
I can
slide,
pick it up from, I can pick it up from here if you'd
yeah,
like.
go ahead, Michael, take it.
Yeah, sure. This is Michael Blake with Mosley Architects. Just as a point of context, the office building was presented a couple of years ago. It had a little bit more robust program. The current owner of the property was planning on moving their headquarters into that building. Since that plan, there was a change in where they were going to relocate. So they're occupying a different site now with their headquarters, but they still have needs to move forward with some level of renovation on this plan. So what we have up here are kind of a revamped set of project goals. Some are similar to what were before, meaning that a portion of the existing commercial building is planned to be removed to make way for some new pad sites, two of which are shown at the bottom corner of this panel that were presented and approved previously by the panel. The key point in the redevelopment strategy is that this is an interim phase to a longer term redevelopment of this particular remaining portion of the building. So we're looking at a shorter term extension of the use of the building. There are a couple of tenants that have a lease that needs to be maintained. So what we're trying to do is be able to address the portion of the building that remains, which is primarily the east-facing facade, and bring it up to a level that is going to be compatible with the other planned development, and maintain the ability to use those leasing spaces for approximately 5 years. So we're really focused on the east-facing facade. And then there are some minor internal things because the portion of the building that is to be removed has one of the exit stairs. We're going to plan an exterior exit stair on the rear of the building, which you'll see a little bit later on. But we just wanted to point out that what was presented before is a little different than the plan today. And these are the project goals that we want you to kind of weigh in mind when reviewing the approach to the redesign. Okay, next panel. So just compulsory, showing the site context. We've shared these before, so you all know this part of Reisterstown Road. It's pretty much unchanged over recent years. Lower right-hand side is just the current state of this site, showing really how the building is viewed from the sidewalk area of Reisterstown Road. Next slide. So just to, again, give some context on site, the dashed line is the outline of the current building. So you can see it's more of a U-shaped plan. The portion that's pochette in red is that portion which will remain in place and in use, and then just the dashed line at the right-hand side shows the portion to be removed. And this is overlaid on what is the current proposed master plan. You can see in the kind of the middle right, there's a couple of outline of a couple of buildings. That's the Pad A site, which is a 2 retail or restaurant type spaces. Starbucks is going to take up lease in one of them, and then the other is yet to be leased. Okay, next slide. Close-ups of the existing office building. Lower right is the aerial and just the sort of numbered photos around the outside. Built in the mid-1970s. It's 2 stories. The second floor covers the entire footprint. The first floor has 2 breezeways that bisect the building. When we're going to be removing the right-hand L-shaped portion and then maintaining the sort of the vertical rectangular portion on the left-hand side. Next slide. A little bit closer view, just showing how we're going to be removing the existing portion. And you can see we've got a section cut, a mark there. That'll on the next slide, you'll see 2 drawings that show basically where that section is cut. So if you want to go to the next slide. So if you recall in the existing conditions, there's a mansard roof form on the second level that slopes from the upper portion down to a soffitted portion at the walkways. And because of the configuration of the new master plan, we've got an access drive that's going to impede on that overhang. So we are proposing to basically shave the mansard off or remove the mansard framing and then reconstruct the wall in a vertical face so that it is clear that curb line. The column line and the walkway, covered walkway, remains similar to what is there now. We're just really reconfiguring that along the length of the eastern face of that mansard facade. Next slide. This is a little bit of a close-up of the ground floor plan and some images. The left-hand image is the current breezeway, which will be maintained. The sidewalk will remain in place. We'll probably have to do a little bit of repair as part of the demo and some of the other work we're proposing, but in essence, that will remain. And then, as mentioned earlier, there's a new exit stair that will have to be placed on the rear of the building to accommodate a second means of egress from the second floor. So we're proposing a pre-engineered covered exterior stair, similar to what's shown in that image. Next slide. Renderings of the elevations. The west, south, and north, from a primary material standpoint, will just be what is there now. We may do some cleanup and some repainting around the windows and some of the trim. But other than that, it will remain as is. The west elevation, we're showing the outline of approximately where the new exterior stair will be placed. We have to coordinate that with some of the access inside, and then there's some one-story additions on the rear that need a little bit of coordination, but that box is essentially where that's going to be going. The east elevation in the lower left, the sort of red pochade and dashed outline, that's approximately where the existing portion that's going to be demolished connects to that second level. And what we're going to be doing is, along with the reconfiguration of the mansard framing, we're going to be building new that infill piece. And then all those 4 columns at the lower level, that will be new columns to support what was otherwise a connection to that existing building that gets demolished. So that's all new columns, new facade on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side, those are existing columns, but on the second level, all new facade in a vertical plane. We are going to be wrapping the columns with brick to match the existing brick on the building. Currently, the columns are exposed painted steel. They need a little bit of remediation, and just to kind of freshen up the look, we're going to wrap those columns in brick. All right, next slide. And then it's just a series of views of how the resulting renovation would look. We're trying to accomplish a couple things here. Be sympathetic with some of the other development on site, but also not deviate drastically from the material palette that's on the building currently. So it's reusing this similar or same concrete shake look shingles, and then some board and batten or wood board that's used on some of the other projects on site to kind of marry the two together. And then the sort of sloping profile mimics some of the other elements on the existing building, the window features that are there now. So all in all, trying to match the two new development and the existing building together. Next slide. This is just a little closer up view. You can see the columns at the first level wrapped in brick now, and then the material along the new facade matching that on the existing. Next slide. This is a view taken back from the sidewalk along Reisterstown. So when we get into the Longhorn Steakhouse, you can kind of see how the two would work together. And again, you can see on the Starbucks Pad A development to the left, that darker siding that's we're proposing something very similar with this new treatment on the east facade to kind of match those two together. Next slide. And just another view from the parking area back, and you kind of see how the new steakhouse and the existing commercial building work together. I think one should be one more maybe. Right. Just a little closer up view from the back side of the Pad A site back towards the east facade. So I think that's it, other than a close-up of the material palette. Pretty simple palette. Brick columns using the brick that's currently on the building to match. Aluminum windows that are kind of in a ribbon fashion, similar to what's there now. A composite board and batten siding that will be a color scheme similar to some of the other siding on the Pad A site. And then concrete or synthetic wood look shakes to match what's out there now. I think that's it.
Very good. Thank you for presenting your project. Marta, are there any speakers from the public for this project who wish to speak at this time?
Cecily, let me check. To all attendees, I will unmute everyone and I will ask if anyone wish to speak. So let me do that. We have a lot of attendees for tonight's meeting. So let me unmute everyone. I just unmuted everyone who's attending tonight's meeting, and I'm asking if there is anyone who would like to speak.
Marta, Marta, there are instructions right here on the screen on how to speak. They're supposed to put their name in the chat, and then we can take the turns doing their speaking. It's right here on the screen.
Yes. So I am going.
So since we have so many people on this meeting, in the efficiency of keeping organized, instead of unmuting everybody, I thought that they were to sign up to speak, or was that feature not available?
That feature is available, and so far I don't have anyone on my end who requested to speak for this particular project, except I would like to check with Mr. Zuckerberg.
Hold on. So we can check with Mr. Zuckerberg, and I'm saying out loud to everybody who is attending this meeting, if you would like a chance to speak, please put your name in the chat section, and we can call on you in turn. If there are people here that have not signed up to speak other than Mr. Zuckerberg. Hopefully that's clear to understand.
And this is the only time that attendants can speak. This is the time when you can speak for this particular project. So I see Mr. Zuckerberg's request. He would like to speak. Mr. Zuckerberg, I'm going to unmute you in a second, and you have 2 minutes if you're speaking on your behalf, or if you represent the community, you are allowed to speak for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can everyone hear Mr. Zuckerberg?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm not quite sure I understand this. Is the Longhorn Pad B Longhorn restaurant going to be next to or contiguous to the existing office building?
Yes. We'll hear from them next.
Well, it's noted as a pad site. Has anybody checked to see if that is defined as a pad site? It's next to the office building, and I'm not sure.
Mr. Zuckerberg, that presentation is going next, and it will be directly adjacent to this office building, not in the parking lot any longer, but that presentation is coming next.
Okay, then I'll defer. And I will be speaking on behalf of the community.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zuckerberg. So, Cecily, there are no speakers that I can see in my sorry, this is my alarm for 2 minutes. I don't have anyone else who would like to speak for this particular project. Brett, Emery, did you possibly receive any, Jen?
Nobody in the chat.
No. Okay. Thank you. So no one else wish to speak for the project.
Marta, thank you for checking on that. Would you please move on to the staff report next then?
Thank you, Cecily. I'm going to read our staff report next. So we provide our comments based on the Comprehensive Manual Development Policies, Pikesville Revitalization Plan, Pikesville Commercial Revitalization Guidelines, and Baltimore County Landscape Manual. In terms of site design, staff recommends approval of the site design intent subject to the following conditions. Number 1, provide a legible site plan, identify materials and show dimensions for the proposed sidewalk on the plan. Number 2, indicate on the plan the location of the dumpster, provide details of dumpster enclosure and its materials. The dumpster shall be adequately screened from public view, complying with the Baltimore County Landscape Manual, Section 3H. In regards to architectural design, form, and image, staff recommends approval subject to the following conditions. Number 1, on all the perspective view renderings, show the existing DoubleTree by Hilton Hotel. Number 2, label the location of the proposed rooftop equipment for the office building and show how it will be screened. Number 3, on the west elevation, show the proposed new exterior exit staircase. In regards to open space and landscape design, staff recommends approval of the open space elements subject to the following conditions. Number 1, provide seating areas for employees and patrons and label them on the plan. Number 2, indicate if any landscaping will be proposed and show on the plan. In regard to street, parking, and circulation, staff recommends approval, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, provide a legible site plan, identify materials, and show dimensions for the proposed sidewalk on the plan. Number 2, provide calculations for the required parking for the office uses and show on the plan. And in regards to signage and lighting, staff is unable to recommend approval of the signage and lighting based on the following. Indicate where lighting and signage will be provided and label on the plan and on the elevation. And this concludes our staff report.
Thank you, Marta. So panelists, I'll move on to our discussion. I'm going to start with Mr. Khan.
Thank you. The one thing I would ask first is sort of the question of signage. The design, as it's been and is now, is not very forgiving for where you place signage. And I think it would be important to see that, particularly if there are multiple tenants in the building. Otherwise, I have no other comments at this point.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Frau.
Good evening. So I just have a clarifying question. So you said there's a 5-year lease that's left over, and I'm assuming that's the tenant that's going to be staying in the office building, and then the rest of it that you're demolishing is to make way for a future development. Is that the right understanding?
That is correct. The one of the tenants that's in the portion to be demolished is West Banco Bank, and we've just completed a freestanding new branch bank for them. So they'll be moving out into the new branch bank shortly. And then the other spaces in the portion to be demolished are either unoccupied or will be unoccupied by the time the demolition occurs. So the only tenants that have leases that will remain past the demolition period are in this portion that we're shown to remain.
Okay. So is the plan after 5 years that you will demolish this building as well, or?
I don't think I can answer that specifically. And I'm not sure the landlord can, if they are willing to. I guess, Tim, if you want to speak to that, I think it's probably out of bounds for me to say so, but
yeah, Michael, I know that Sandy Marenberg joined in on the call. Sandy's been our project manager from Blue Ocean all throughout on this Pikesville Hilton redevelopment. Sandy, are you on, and can you hear us? And could you answer Ms. Ra's question if you happen to know?
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. When the tenancy is over, we will reevaluate whether or not to reuse the building or not. There is a demand for other uses on this site other than that building, but we have a tenant that does not want to move, and we will respect his right to stay to the end of the lease.
Do you have I guess, so the part that makes me a bit nervous, and this, I understand this happens all the time with, especially developments in big sites, is that you get very short term usage for buildings, and then you almost demolish and flip them like they're sweaters or something. And
well, no,
so
and I understand, but this building has been occupied since 1975, so it's going on 50 years. I in all due respect, a 50-year-old building is not Class A or even Class B anymore. And given the results of the pandemic, there's not a lot of need for old office space.
Okay. Do you have a construction waste management plan? I guess I would just encourage you to look at having some plans in place so that when you do demolish, it's a big site and it is actually on trend to use recycled materials. And I'm sure there are good things to use in this building. So have that in place for this big site that you have over 10 acres. I think that will be immensely beneficial. So I
Absolutely.
just wanted to make that point.
No, and it's a valid point. No, again, that I wouldn't consider this to be an energy efficient building now that it's, 45 years old. So, anything we do there will eventually improve the whole property. And that's our goal is to improve, update the property as we go along and make it more relevant to the people in Pikesville.
Is there an energy standard you're working towards?
I'm sorry?
Is there an energy standard that you can working towards?
Right now, it's going to remain the energy standard that it is.
Okay.
But the new buildings meet all current energy standards.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ra. Mr. Reynolds?
Hey, Cecily, I think my only comment is just echoed in the staff report related to having some amenities for office workers coming back to the site, just with the new sidewalk and some of the covered spaces to ensure that those amenities are in place for the tenants. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Sharma?
I don't have any question, but just a simple comment that would be, I believe, will be taken care of. During the construction phase, I believe that all the care would be taken to ensure that other businesses are not affected, neither their clients, and that it's safe.
Mr. Yusufero?
Good evening. So I do appreciate the history that was provided by Mr. Blake. I do remember seeing this office building a couple years ago and was wondering, so thank you for that. I don't have any comments. I'm just trying to be proactive as I'm thinking in my head about the motion coming up. I do have a question for the applicant as it relates to the staff report, specifically the signage and the lighting comment. Are you proposing any signage on the site or building? And further, are you providing and proposing any lighting that can be perhaps talked about tonight so as to try to make a motion that perhaps carries forward?
Let me take a shot at that, Mr. Yusufero. Tim Catroco here. Thank you for that question. The signage that has been on this master plan has been shown throughout the times that we've appeared before the panel. In fact, Mr. Yusufero, you've been very kind enough to point out some things to us on previous meetings, one of which was to check that one of the signs might have not been on our property, might have even been on the state highway property. And I think we actually made an adjustment based on your observation. So we thank you for that. But the signage has always kind of been shown on all the plans. And I'm interested to know, and it was an excellent question that came up earlier by Mr. Khan, and that is the tenants that might be in the office building, where might their signage appear? And I think perhaps maybe Sandy Marenberg might be the best to give an answer to that. And then maybe Mr. Blake can talk about the lighting and how we might tend to the tenants the signage for the tenants that will be on in the office building.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. There's an existing directory board, and I believe there's more than one, of the 1950s variety. Just there's just going to be a handful of tenants, literally 5 or 6, and the directory board that's there now would just be updated. There's also existing lighting, at night on the building, built into the building, that will remain. But there won't be any new large signage on this building. We're not average. There's no tenant here that needs that. This is just directory at the door.
Understood, and that clarifies. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you all. Joe, so I assume that wraps it up for you?
It does. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, I just wanted to return back to one comment I think that other panelists made. Just ask about the clear pedestrian circulation space that is now shown with the new columns in place. What would be the distance between the inside column face to the building face, or any protrusion of the building?
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we measured this at one point. I believe it's going to be about 14 feet from inside column face to the face of the building. There are some parts of the building that have some bay windows that diminish that by a little bit, but I believe the dimension's 14 feet.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. So, you know, I'll kind of wrap up this. Sandy, did you have something else to add to that? I didn't.
Ms. Bedwell, I did have one thing to add. Maybe Mr. Blake can answer this. I saw one comment from the planning office about providing seating areas for employees. Mr. Blake, is there an area that it can be utilized for that purpose? I'm not sure if there is. I wanted to know if you have a reply to that.
I guess the short answer to that would be we would work with the landlord to identify suitable areas. I think you'll see with the next presentation that there is a more comprehensive redevelopment of the site, and there are some opportunities for that with some of the other development. So I guess that's the short answer to that question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Just going back to the walkway, this is the same distance that's there now, and that was approved in the prior building. That this walkway distance hasn't changed. Number one. Number two, yeah, we will find places for employees to hang out. I mean, literally, they're across the street from the Starbucks, which will have outdoor seating. So there will be on-site places for them to sit outside. It
Just
may
really
not
across the parking lot, Sandy, not really a street, but just a short walk across the parking lot.
Exactly.
Yeah, and one other thing that
it
was
will not be attached to this building. I just want to be clear on that.
And one thing that was stated earlier, and I know you all heard it, the bank building has already been built and constructed. That was approved by you all previously. So we're making nice progress. That is already finished and nearing occupancy once we do a couple more things. So that the project's moving along nicely, and we're just trying to get the next couple of phases moving.
Those points of clarification. Panel, I'd like to ask if anyone would like to make a motion at this time. Again, approve the project, approve with conditions, or come back to DRP or the acceptable motions.
So this is Joe Yusufero. I would like to make a motion to approve the project conditioned upon the Department of Planning staff report, which is dated September 8th of 2021.
I'm on a Zoom call.
I'm sorry, who's second?
Donald again.
Don, thank you. All in favor of the motion?
Cecily, I'm sorry, can I interrupt for a minute just so we can clarify something? Because we had a comment in there that we can't make a recommendation on signage and lighting because we didn't see any, and you all have had a discussion about that. So I think the motion needs to be modified.
Very good. Joe, would you like to modify your motion to incorporate the exclusion of that particular comment, please? As there is none indicated signage or additional lighting.
Yes, thank you, Jennifer, for bringing that up, and I apologize for that. So let me take another stab at this. So I propose a motion to approve the project conditioned upon the Department of Planning staff report dated September 8th, 2021, with the exception of the signage and lighting comment from the Department of Planning. And because there are no new signs nor lighting proposed on the building, that section essentially wouldn't apply. So conditioned upon the staff report with the exception of the signage and lighting comment.
Thank you. And now for the second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Very good. The motion carries. Thank you for the presentation. I assume we'll be hearing the same group next. So let's move on to item 2, which is same address, 1726 Reisterstown Road. This time we'll be looking at the Longhorn Steakhouse on Pad Site B. And presenter, go ahead and please present your project. The floor is yours again.
Thank you, Chairwoman Bedwell. I'm going to turn it over. We may shuffle the deck a little bit for you and have some different folks speak on the Longhorn Steakhouse. So I know they did a lot. They're a national concern, as you all know, and they do projects all over the country and all over Maryland. And I think they have their own personnel that are going to be speaking to their presentation. So I'll turn it over to the folks at Longhorn and have them get started with the presentation.
Actually, Tim, Carla is going to go first, and then we'll be chiming in as necessary for clarification or to answer questions.
Okay, I thank you for that clarification. And as we can tell by that beautiful accent, that these are folks that are from other parts of the country, apparently. So that's wonderful. Go ahead, Carla. You want to go ahead and kick it off and get us started?
You want to take it, or you want me to do? You want me to
Oh,
go?
I was just gonna, yeah, sorry. Stu and I are not in the same location due to our microphone issues. So, yeah, I was going to say Stu and I will tag team this.
Yeah.
Actually.
All right, I'll start off. Let's move on to the next slide. I guess, Martha, this is obviously for the Longhorn Steakhouse. And this slide is essentially a repeat of the second slide from the previous presentation. So I won't spend too much more time on this one. Obviously, we've been here before, and we have 2 bites of the apple tonight to try to move this project to the next level. You can go to the next slide. So this slide just shows the Longhorn Steakhouse previous location, which was a separate freestanding pad site, much closer to Reisterstown Road, as you can see on that left slide. That was as it was shown as part of the master plan, which was done back in February of 2020. We'll get more in depth into the relocation of the pad site shortly, but just to point that out on this particular slide, I wanted to see that. The slide to the right on the same page provides some context for the existing signs to be, no, go back please, sorry. The side on the right is a signage master plan type of a slide. It does show the 3 signs that we are going to be removing, and the 2 proposed signs are indicated with the heavier arrows. One is just north of the existing entrance, and the second one is proposed between the Pad C bank, which is currently under construction and almost finished, as Tim mentioned, and the old location of the Pad B Longhorn site. So hopefully that gives Mr. Zuckerberg a little bit more context on the signage locations. Now we can move on to the next slide. Thank you, Martha. So again, this one is to emphasize again the relocation of the Pad B Longhorn Pad from the original location, which again was much closer to Reisterstown Road and kind of lined up with the other Pad A and Pad C. Based on a couple of reasons, we've moved that pad site to now be attached to the hotel, and it is about 11 feet separated from the existing office building to remain that we just discussed in the previous presentation. So the footprint actually got slightly smaller when we relocated it, but it is now, as mentioned, is going to be attached to the Longhorn Hotel, and this provides a little bit better circulation, we feel, for the driveway across the face of the office building to remain to get to the bank, which is again very close to opening, and also maintaining the very similar pathway for hotel users to get to the main entrance. Okay, let's move on to slide C. Again, this is the pad site relocated on a site plan. Would show some landscaping, black and white version. Shows pad site A, which is the Starbucks, which we've been before you about, the existing office building to be renovated, which we talked about earlier tonight, and the pad site C, which is the bank, which we also talked about on a previous evening. So pad site B, as you can see, is now tucked in between pad C, the bank pad, and the existing office building to remain. And again, it will be attached to the side entrance of the hotel at that location. Okay, next slide. This is the same zoning slide that we had before, so we can move through that one. Again, this is an aerial that kind of shows similarly to the office building. It gives site context, the overall site, and where the Longhorn Pad is going to be in conjunction with the existing hotel building and the other pad sites and parking areas that are being developed out front. It also indicates some of the surrounding improvements, retail, gasoline, Target retail, things of that nature. The future rural farm store site is also indicated on this slide. It's still in the early processes of getting approved, so we anticipate that may be happening across the street. Moving on to the next slide. This is some site photos similar to the previous presentation. Again, it's giving you some context of the site from different photo locations, which are shown on the top left slide. Again, the main one, it would probably be the entrance, slide number 2, top right, which shows the entrance into the site. There's a signage there in the median of the entrance that is going to be one of the signs to be removed, and then there will no longer be a sign in the entrance driveway, which is, I think, a plus for visibility for vehicles getting in and out. Okay, next slide. This is some more on-site slides. As you can see from, item 6, or slide number 6, is showing an angle that will eventually be where the Longhorn's going to be. It gives some perspective from the parking lot towards the hotel and the location of where the hotel is going to drop in. Next slide. These are the similar streetscape shots that Michael had in his presentation for the office building. It's, I think he made a good presentation of that, so we could probably move forward on that slide. Again, this is another contextual location for where the Longhorn is going to go. This is an existing conditions plan. The existing commercial office buildings are still there. They're going to be raised. The office building to remain and be renovated is shown. The blue square is the future Longhorn Pad location, and then the pad site C, which is the bank that's mostly completed its construction process, is off there towards the Beltway. Again, another slide that shows the previous location of the Longhorn Pad when it was freestanding. That area has been redeveloped, as it were, on our site plans to show additional parking areas. Landscape islands are provided, and wall connections from those parking spaces towards the Longhorn, as those will probably be the primary location for parkers to use the Longhorn site for access. Next, please. So this is a slide with respect to the stormwater management for the site. All 3 pads, A, B, and C, will be addressed for stormwater management requirements with the underground vault system that we're showing on the slide to the right. It will provide water quality and a variance to water quantity being requested based on the fact that the 100-year peak discharges are essentially the same between the pre-developed condition and the post-development condition, based on the opportunities that we were able to do by providing impervious areas throughout the site to offset some of the new impervious areas. Those stormwater management plans are currently under review with DEP's stormwater management section. We've had one cycle of comments. We've addressed those and resubmitted them. They're currently under review, and we anticipate will be granted approval at some point soon. Okay, next. So this is a landscape plan rendering with the pad sites as they will ultimately be configured with the office building to remain. It gives good context, I think, to the brick red stamped concrete crosswalks throughout the site to connect the bank to the Longhorn and the Longhorn to the parking spaces and Starbucks to the office building. It kind of allows for all the internal users to walk between the site amenities and the buildings to get in just be able to get to between the buildings on site comfortably. Next slide. So this is a rendering of the foundation plantings that the Longhorn folks have come up with. They like to do their own landscape plantings for the actual area right adjacent to their footprint. And this is the plan that they came up with. This plan will be included in our landscape submittal to Mr. Herman for review of the landscape and lighting plans. And as stated similarly to the stormwater management submittal, we've made a submittal to him of the landscape and lighting plans for the pad site development. So we'll see what comments he may have with respect to this stuff, but we anticipate it looking similar to this in its finished condition. Next. This is a planning unit calculation sheet for the required landscaping for the project, showing that we were required in around 78, I believe it is, total required planning units, and we're near 118 proposed. So we are exceeding the minimum requirement, and I think at the end of the day we'll probably be in that range for actual plannings once Mr. Herman completes his review process. Okay, next. This is a parking tabulation chart that we have included as a slide here to show all the uses on the site, including the new pad sites, to generate a overall parking requirement. There was a variance that was granted in 2019 that reduced our requirement to 607 parking spaces, and we will be providing 624 as currently configured on site. So we meet that minimum based on the zoning variance, with a couple extra, which the tenants will be happy to use. Next, please. So this part of the presentation, I think, would probably be best for me to hand off to the Longhorn folks, and they can talk about their architecture and things associated with that. Thank you.
We have someone from Longhorn who would like to present. If you're having any issue, please chat directly to Jennifer Nugent.
Good evening, and thank you for your time on the agenda. My name is Michelle Wright, a site development consultant for this Longhorn project. I'll say just a few words, and then Sean Rodell, the design project manager, can speak to any particular concerns that you have as we progress through the evening. This Longhorn is designed in particular for this site that is, as has been explained, close to the hotel. We think that this will work excellently for hospitality for both the restaurant guest and the hotel guest. The Longhorn includes a special walkway that has been designed to enhance the access for hotel guests to and from the restaurant. The elevations have addressed concerns as to a blend of compatible materials with the buildings that have already been reviewed and approved by the design panel for Pad A and Pad C. So our neutral palette does lend itself well to this particular location. I know that several of you have asked about signage. So for the presentation this evening, we have depicted the proposed Longhorn identification signage for wall signs in these elevations. Sean, do you have additional comments about the design or the materials for our structure?
No, not at the moment. If they have some questions, I can address them though.
That concludes the presenter's presentation.
Well,
as far as the structure, I think our time might be better spent in addressing any comments or concerns that the panel has rather than going point by point with our materials and through our elevations. But as you already know from having received the package in advance or the presentation in advance, you do have color elevations there which give an even better depiction than the particular black and white that's shown here with the dimensions.
Yeah, hi, this is Sandy. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Marenberg.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, this building is not attached to the hotel. This is a freestanding building on its own pad site with a connection, a new to be built connection to one set of doors at the hotel so the guests of the hotel can enter into the restaurant, since the hotel restaurant will not be serving in conflict with the Longhorn. But the Longhorn itself is a freestanding pad site with connection. It's not attached in the sense that it's against the existing building. There is a separation.
And this
Sandy,
is Carla.
Oh, sorry. It would be fair to say that there's a hyphen connection, right? A minor, I don't know what the dimension is, but there is a physical connection, but the majority of the facade is not directly adjacent to the existing.
That is correct.
And I think if you flip to slide 25 or sheet 25, that would be a good slide to show exactly what Sandy's talking about, how the Longhorn and that corridor will connect to the existing hotel. And that's also a colored rendered elevation, so that might be better to look at.
Marta, can you advance to 25? Thank you.
So the bottom elevation there shows that connection. Obviously, all the way to the right is the existing hotel. And then you see the double doors there, and that would be the connection. And you could see the actual Longhorn and the separation. The majority of it is separated from that existing hotel.
Very good. If there are any other further points from the presenters, speak now. Otherwise, I'm going to advance on to ask Marta if there are any folks signed up to speak on this particular project.
So there is more, we actually have about 20 more slides.
Okay. So you would like to go through those before we move on?
I do think we should, just because some of the information I think might be relevant. Like we haven't gotten to any of the signage or the site furniture, things like that.
The floor is still yours. Go ahead.
Okay, I think we could do it quickly. So Marta, if you don't mind just advancing to the next slide. I think that's backwards. Okay, yeah, this would be the next one. So again, this is just the material board showing the different material choices for the Longhorn. And then if you move on to the next few slides, we have some perspective views, and they may look familiar. They're the ones you also saw in Michael Blake's presentation. Could you move on, Marta, to the next one, please? So here you could see obviously to the left is the renovated office building, but you can see our Longhorn to the right. There also is a physical separation between those two as well. And then over the structure to the left of this view is the new pad site A. It's the Starbucks. Next one, please. So this is looking from Reisterstown Road, kind of straight into the site where you can see the Longhorn over to the right through the parking lot. And next one. And then just a little bit closer, it's mainly the office building in the front portion of this view, but if you look beyond, that would be our Longhorn Steakhouse. And then moving on to the next slide, please. So here we have a site lighting and photometric plan. And if you showing, you know, we've done the full photometric and then all site lighting throughout. Next slide, please. This is the floor plan within the Longhorn. I don't know if anyone from Longhorn wants to talk about this. And also a lighting legend showing where light fixtures would be on the Longhorn. And I guess just for the sake of getting through this quickly, we have a couple cut sheets on the next slide showing the different exterior building light fixtures. If you want to scroll through those, they are labeled to match with this previous slide. There's another, next slide, please. Again, yep, the site, the exterior building light fixtures, and then next slide, and this slide shows the site lighting fixture. There we go. Next slide, please. These just show some site details. So for example, the bollard, the to-go parking sign detail that Longhorn uses, and then a little parking plan showing where the to-go parking, where those signs will be located. That's to the right. And next slide. This is the typical Longhorn bench that would be placed outside for any guest waiting for a table. You can see it has their logo in the center there. And then next slide. Actually, it's just a cover slide moving into the site and building signage. So next slide, please. So I know we've already talked about the joint ID or shared tenant signage. This is the proposed pylon sign. We are proposing 2 of them, and they are the exact same. So both would look just like this with the list of tenants. This shows dimensions and whatnot. I will note that we are in the process of getting a variance to have the second freestanding pylon sign along the frontage. Only one freestanding sign is permitted along the frontage, and so one of them has been issued a sign permit, and the second one we are in for a variance. We have a case number, but we have not yet been scheduled for the zoning hearing. But this is just the sign detail showing what that sign will look like. Next slide. So I don't know if Sean or Michelle, if you guys want to take over and just go run through the Longhorn building signage on the exterior, like the wall-mounted signage here.
Sure, I can run through real quick.
Yep.
We're just showing 2 standard Longhorn signs. Our signs are white during the day, but the Longhorn lights up red at night. And then we have 2 of our steerhead logos on the building, one on each chimney, and they're halo lit. That's pretty much it. We just have minimal signage on the building because we only have 2 facades that face out. The other 2 facades face building, so we're not going to put signage on them. So, and if you want to flip to the next slide, you can see what the signage look like during the day. So as I said, the Longhorn lights up red at night, but it remains white during the day. And that's all I have on signage.
So the next slide shows the other building facade. There we go. Yep. This would be, I guess, more of the view from the West Banco pad site, not the Reisterstown Road frontage. The next slide shows a little bit more sign detail information about the wall-mounted signs. And then next slide, please, shows the, yep, the second slide detail sheet here. Next slide. This is our a bike rack detail, and we could point out where we are showing those proposed bike racks. And then I think now we've come to our last slide. If you want to flip to the last one here, it's just a concrete sidewalk detail for all of the private on-site concrete walks. But for any public sidewalks, we'd be using the county standard for that. But this is the concrete sidewalk detail for on-site sidewalks. Jen and Mark, I know that we submitted yesterday a revised presentation that included a little bit, or really just one more slide about the site signage. Is that something we want to pull up if possible? You tell us.
Carl, yeah, let me just chime in just quickly because I wanted to follow up on one thing you mentioned, and I want to make sure the panel understands. The second sign that you presented, the joint ID signs, that requires a variance approval by the administrative law judge. We have filed for that, but we do not have our hearing scheduled yet. That remains to be seen whether the administrative law judge will give us the approval to have that second sign on Reisterstown Road. That's the joint ID sign that you showed in one of the other slides. So I wanted, that was it right there. So I wanted to make sure, wanted to make sure that the board understood that. We have another administrative hearing process to go through. Those signs have always been shown on our plans throughout these processes. And I mentioned earlier that even Mr. Yusufero helped us and corrected us in where the one location was to make sure that we were keeping it on our own property, which we have done. So the signs are important to us as people come off the ramp to the Beltway and get on the Reisterstown Road. They have to make a quick decision of whether they're coming into our site or they're going to merge left and continue going south on Reisterstown Road. So there's a short opportunity for merger there, while people who are coming south on Reisterstown Road from the other side of the Beltway and crossing over the Beltway may have to make a decision to merge over into our turn lane to come into the Longhorn Steakhouse or one of the other tenant sites on our property. So you'll have people coming off the Beltway to merge on the Reisterstown Road, while there are people coming down Reisterstown Road to merge into our turn lane and pull into our property. So it's important that the signage makes it clear what they need to do and how they need to do it so that they can make these vehicular maneuvers in a short distance and alleviate traffic concerns as they come in and out of our property. We're going to greatly improve the entrance into the property, but we need to make sure they can get there safely. And I think the signage will play a key role in that. So that's really kind of the discussion on the signage. I have to apologize to Mr. Zuckerberg and his association when maybe we didn't make that clear enough, because he had some questions early on about that signage package. And we've been trying and we have tried to meet with their association. We had one meeting with them, and we're happy to meet with them again going forward. If they'd like to, we're happy to make a separate presentation to them so everybody's on the same page with what we're hoping to do. But we still have another public hearing to go to with the administrative law judge regarding that signage. But we would ask for your approval of the entire package tonight. The Longhorn, the office building, which you've already done, and of course the Longhorn Steakhouse. We're happy to have them at this location. They're a great restaurant, and I think they're going to be a tremendous amenity to the Pikesville community. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation, adding to it. Marta, I'm going to ask now, I know we at least have one speaker from the public. Can you go through that list?
Yes, Cecily, Ms. Bedwell, thank you. We have Alan Zuckerberg, and I will let him speak in 1 second. Mr. Zuckerberg, can you can speak now.
Okay, you can hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good, thank you.
And you have 5 minutes as you represent the community.
Okay, so I'm a little unclear on behalf of Pikesville Community Corporation, and we are an entity composed of 15 homeowner associations in the Pikesville area. We do like to see improvement along Reisterstown Road. However, there's some questions that we have, and one of them is about the signage. But before I get into that, perhaps somebody, particularly Mr. Catroco. Can you tell me what happened at the Development Review Committee yesterday? I think your client went in for I'm told your client went in for a limited exemption on B2. Is that correct? And if so, what happened?
Actually, a B8, Alan, with the Longhorn Steakhouse moving its location from what was previously approved, as you saw tonight on this presentation, it was further out on the parking lot. Now it's moving in closer to the hotel building so that tenants, the residents of the hotel can move more easily in and out of that restaurant. So by virtue of moving that building, we had to go back to the DRC to get that approval.
Did you get an exemption?
I believe that was recommended. We haven't gotten it yet.
Well, is that an exemption that exempts you from going in front of the administrative law judge?
No, not at all, Alan. Not at all, Mr. Zuckerberg. We still have to go.
Hey, Alan, Tim, we know each other.
I didn't want to get too personal on this meeting, Alan. But anyway, we still have to go to our hearing, and it just hasn't been scheduled yet. We're in the works of getting it on the calendar. I'm hoping we can come meet with your association to answer all your questions so that the board doesn't have a concern that we're not giving you all the information you guys need, because we still need to do another public hearing with you.
That would be fine. So my next question is, currently there exists at the entrance a monument sign that says Doubletree. And just north of that, on the same side of Reisterstown Road, there's a sign has three names on it, and it's on a pedestal. Are you aware of that sign?
I am. They're both going away, Mr. Zuckerberg. We're going to take they are going to go away and not come back.
So then the only thing that's right now, you're going to have the joint identification sign, and you're asking for a second one, correct?
That's correct. Yep.
And that'll be the only signage you're asking for on Reisterstown Road.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. That clarifies something for us.
Yeah, right.
As far as the steakhouse is concerned, and the reason I ask this is because stating that it's on a pad site may have some other consequences down the road as far as signage and some other things. Is this, and I just want the panel to understand this, is this really a pad site as defined by the county?
Yeah,
I propose that as a rhetorical question, but before approving this as a pad site and leaving this open to further questioning, I just wonder if the panel is absolutely certain that this meets the requirements, because it fronts. And by the way, of course, I was confused because the plan that was submitted dated June 17th, 21, it's completely different than the master plan that was submitted in the hearing you just had before this one, which, that plan shows the Pad B restaurant not anywhere near the office building. It's between Pad A1 and Pad AC. So these things have not been updated, if I'm not mistaken. At any rate, maybe you can address that question. Is this a pad site? Somebody can address that question, because if it's in question, then perhaps it's premature to ask for the recommendation of the panel.
Mr. Zuckerberg, this is Cecily Bedwell. I'm just going to point out that that type of question would fall into more of a zoning and approval that would be reviewed by others in the county, not the design review. Our purview is really aesthetics and making sure that it's compatible, what is proposed is compatible with the surroundings. So I will defer that to Jennifer and her staff, and just give you any more time that you need remaining to ask additional questions. But that particular question is not within our purview for the design review.
Okay, well,
I can answer the question when Mr. Zuckerberg is finished. This is Jennifer.
Okay, so and of course the other thing is that the way it fronts, well, in the prior hearing before the panel was concerned about the flow of traffic, and I'm assuming that that's not an issue that you all are concerned about at this point in time, because we would be relying on you for your advice as to the flow of traffic at this site. So if
The
that's something,
mechanics of traffic are not within our purview, only if there is, a design implication for that, or, it disrupts pedestrian circulation through the site. But, right, turning movements and such are not within our purview.
yeah, well, it was in a prior, I should, let me make a distinction. My recollection is in a prior DRP, the panel was concerned about the flow of traffic, the way it was to flow around the pad A.
Mr. Zuckerberg, time is over 5 minutes.
I'm sorry?
Your time is up. It's over 5 minutes.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your input. I'll let Jennifer respond to your particular question on the pad site.
Yes, I can. When the Pad Site B did come to the panel, it was called Pad Site B. I think for this presentation, they didn't rename that, but from the county standpoint, once it does move location and becomes attached to the hotel building, it will cease to be, by nature of definition through regulations and code, it will cease to be a pad site. So therefore, anything that they do to that piece will no longer be able to do so through a freestanding pad use.
Okay, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jennifer, for that clarification. Marta, I'd ask you at this time, are there any additional speakers signed up before we go to the staff report?
No, but let me check with Brad and Emery. Any speakers that you have on your end that registered possibly?
No, from my end, no.
Okay. Jen, any speakers?
No speakers.
No, not for this project.
Okay. So no, we don't have any more speakers for this project, Cecily, Ms. Bedwell.
And then you can just go right into the staff report. Thank you, Martha.
Okay. Thank you, Cecily. Let me move to the staff report. So the Department of Planning has reviewed the proposal to conformance with the following: Comprehensive Manual of Development Policies, Pikesville Revitalization Plan, Pikesville Commercial Revitalization Guidelines, and Baltimore County Landscape Manual. In regards to site design, staff recommends approval of the site design intent subject to the following conditions. Number 1, provide a legible site plan, show dimensions for the proposed sidewalks, and clearly label all proposed amenities. Number 2, correct the statement throughout the entire presentation that the master plan and signage were approved by DRP. The master plan was presented to DRP in 2019 and 2020 and received conditions. The applicant did not resubmit the materials for final approval to the DRP. The proposed signage was presented to DRP in November 2019, but the applicant stated that at that time they did not request approval for signage. Number 3, consider continuation of a decorative fence along Reisterstown Road, previously approved for Pad A1, A2, and provide enhanced landscaping to screen the proposed additional parking from Reisterstown Road. Number 4, for the entire site, an approved variance number 2019-0231-A permits a total of 607 parking spaces in lieu of the required 835. Since the site design proposes 624 parking spaces, remove 13 parking spaces located along Reisterstown Road and provide additional landscaping. Number 5, provide details for dumpster enclosure and its materials. The dumpster shall be adequately screened from public view, complying with the Baltimore County Landscape Manual, Section 3H. In regards to architectural design, form, and image, staff recommends approval subject to the following condition. Number one, on all the perspective view renderings show the existing DoubleTree by Hilton Hotel. Number two, label the location of the proposed rooftop equipment for the building and show how it will be screened. In regards to open space and landscape design, staff recommends approval subject to the following conditions. Number one, provide outdoor seating and dining areas for patrons and label them on the plan. Number two, consider continuation of a decorative fence along the Reisterstown Road, previously approved for Pad A1, A2, and provide enhanced landscaping to screen the proposed additional parking from Reisterstown Road. In regards to streets, parking, and circulation, staff recommends approval subject to the following conditions. Number one, label dimensions for the proposed sidewalks on the plan. Number two, provide details for the proposed bike racks and clearly label them on the plan. Number three, for the entire site, an approved variance number 2019-0231-A permits a total of 607 parking spaces in lieu of the required 835. Since the site design proposes 624 parking spaces, remove 13 parking spaces located along Reisterstown Road, and provide additional landscaping. In regards to signage and lighting, staff recommends approval of the lighting subject to the following condition. Indicate if and where additional lighting for the parking lot will be provided. And staff does not recommend approval of the signage based on the following. The Department of Planning does not support two joint ID signs on the same street frontage. Remove one of the two joint ID signs. And this concludes our staff report.
Sorry, finding my way to the mute button. Thank you, Marta. I appreciate that. Panel will now move on to our discussion. I'm going to start in reverse order. I'm sorry?
Hi, this is Sandy. Can I have a moment to speak on the conditions and recommendations?
Mr. Merenberg, that's not the order of the meeting.
Yeah,
Please
sorry,
speak after
Mr.
the
Merenberg.
discussion.
Right, sorry, we are in discussion at this time. Mr. Yusufero, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. Marta, this is the exact plan that I'd like to review, so I appreciate you pulling that up. My first just comment is I didn't hear in the presentation where the loading area or the dumpster area is. Could somebody clarify where that would be?
Sure. Can I now speak?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sandy. I was going to recommend moving to slide 12 because I actually pulled that up because I realized we forgot to point that out on slide 12.
They are going to use the existing trash compactor that sits behind the existing office building that was previously used by the restaurant. They are going to use it, and that sits behind the office building. In addition, the loading dock area for the hotel will be used by the restaurant, and there's an existing driveway that will take them to the back of the restaurant where they will, by hand, take it up to the back of the restaurant. So there is no new.
Okay, understood. So if I can describe it, so behind the office building that we just talked about, it appears to be a loading area. So a truck would park, and they would use some kind of dolly to get the goods into the restaurant.
That is correct.
Understood. Thank you. My next comment relates to the area, the landscape area along Reisterstown Road. So previously, I believe the panel reviewed the master plan with the restaurant on the pad. And if you're leaving, picking up your coffee from Starbucks, there was 4 or 5 parking spaces in front, but now there's 13. And I believe that in the Department of Planning staff report, they're the spaces that they're proposing to remove. I believe there's a grading differential from Reisterstown Road down to the site, but it was hard for me to read the plans. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is, Joe.
Okay. Approximately how many feet?
Well, it varies. It gets deeper as you go towards the Beltway. I'm not probably the best one to give that answer.
Yeah, Joe, this is Stu at CMR. There is a proposed retaining wall along between those 13 spaces and the right of way of Reisterstown Road. Like Sandy said, it on the Starbucks side, it kind of necks down to nothing. But as you go towards the Beltway, the highest point and where it turns back towards the site is a 5-foot height at that corner, and back down to nothing as it approaches the parking lot itself.
Okay. Thank you.
There's a retaining wall there.
Yeah. So is there what materials are the retaining wall going to be?
I would anticipate it would be a modular block material that would match in color some of the other on-site buildings and the dumpster enclosure that serves the Starbucks building, which is in the parking lot as well.
Okay. Thank you. I have 2 more comments and/or questions. My next comment question goes to the Longhorn Steakhouse team. There's a comment in the Department of Planning staff report that recommends outdoor seating and dining in and around the building. My question to the Longhorn team is that customary to what you typically do on let's say other sites in Baltimore County and or Maryland?
No, sir, it isn't. The Longhorn Steakhouse experience in Maryland has proven that outdoor seating is not the best land use, nor is it an in-demand customer experience. So in an effort to meet the intention of the Reisterstown guidelines, we are planning benches, a depiction of which is shown as a spec sheet in this package, so that exterior seating is available for guest waiting or for parties that are going to be joining others. And we do not intend to have any actual restaurant service in patio seating format for the Longhorn.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying. My next and final comment has to do with parking and trying to understand the parking demand for the center. So Marta, if you could go back to the site rendering. I can't recall what page it was. Oh, that one. So if you can see and this is a comment to, I think, Mr. Marenberg, if you can see the bottom kind of left-hand corner of this rendering, it appears that most, if not all, of those parking spaces are full. And I would assume that that's for the hotel guests.
Joe, you are correct.
Okay.
That's for the hotel. And the 13 spaces that were mentioned prior by you are actually assigned to the Longhorn. I mean, that's part of the lease with the Longhorn.
Understood. So where I was going with the comment was understanding that I'm going to call it the bottom left is prime parking spaces for the hotel. I'm going to call it the top parking spaces along Reisterstown next to the Starbucks and in front of the Longhorn. Considering that there is also another approved restaurant on the inside of Starbucks, it feels to me that those spaces are absolutely critical and needed for the demand of all 3 restaurants. Frankly, it might even be underparked. So I'm inclined to say recognizing that the spaces along Reisterstown Road may be a little bit close, but they were approved to be close before. I think it's a better approach to keep the parking spaces and expand the field, recognizing that the hotel parking is already full, whatever time of day this was taken. So thank you very much, and they were my comments.
So appreciate it. Mr. Sharma?
I don't have a comment. I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Reynolds?
Yep, just to build on some of Joe's comments, I think if the center is truly overparked as noted in the staff report, it just feels, when you look at this site plan, it just looks like a collection of 4 buildings that are sitting in a parking field. It seems like there could be a stronger opportunity to take that promenade that runs in front of the office building and pull that through front of the Longhorn building, and then over to the bank site. When you look at the site plans, which are fairly difficult to read, and when you go through the package, each one seems a little bit different in what it's showing, so it's hard to tell what's the final condition that's proposed. But the brick crosswalks, which were mentioned to be kind of the unifying element of the site plan, oftentimes just kind of run to nowhere. They run to kind of a landscape island or a tree, and then it zigzags back over to another planter. It just seems like there could be some more thought to those true connections. Seems like a stronger connection could also be made between the Starbucks and the office building. I know we're not reviewing the Starbucks, but I have some concerns with that parking and the drive-through and people coming and going from that building with the pedestrians there. It just seems like a lot going on in a tight space. Also, just the connection where the former Longhorns building was, kind of out on Reisterstown Road. The way the parking and the sidewalks are designed there, it just kind of feels like leftover space. It feels kind of like 2 different parking lots. It feels like there could be a stronger connection back up to Reisterstown Road if you're going to put that sidewalk differentiating there. And I do agree with the staff report that even with the grade change there, it seems like a consistent landscape edge would strengthen the frontage for this property and enhance it, especially with the comment for trying to announce yourselves off of the Beltway there. I think you could start to do your branding and use the landscape and the site itself to kind of create your place there on Reisterstown Road. And then finally, I agree with the staff comments about the outdoor dining. I totally understand the Longhorns approach. It just seems like, times like we're in now are inevitable to be here, coming and going, and having that flexibility for a space where you might be able to put a table or some benches out would be nice. But again, it was very difficult to see on the site plan where those seating amenities were proposed. So I think, as the staff report had mentioned, having a clearer site plan would be very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Moving on to Ms. Rowe.
Thank you. I have a question and a comment. First is a question for the Longhorn team. Are the windows operable for this building?
No, they're not.
They're not. I wonder, with the comments made about outdoor seating and the airborne illnesses that we've been dealing with, if just making the windows operable so that you can have better ventilation and bring the outdoors in a little bit when necessary might be an idea. So just wanted to make that comment. Another thing is on the photometric plan. I think it's page 30. There's some parts that are just too dark. And normally for suburban parking lots, the minimum you want it to be 0.5 foot candle. And there are parts where there's going to be foot traffic and potential injuries and lawsuits where it's just way too dark. So I just would like to encourage you to make sure that at least foot candle of 0.5 is met in every spot that's been pointed out. There, like even the average around 4 is, not even close. So that's a safety issue that I think needs to be addressed. And that's all my comments. Thank you.
Moving on to Mr. Khan.
Yes, I have one question. That's a good slide. Go back to that. One more back. There it is, a wall that appears in front of the office building. Can someone explain that? That hasn't been addressed.
That's a dumpster corral for the Starbucks.
Say it
for
again.
Pad A. It's a dumpster enclosure for Pad A.
Okay, and go back to the site plan. And you all had mentioned in one of the comments, a decorative fence along Reisterstown Road. Can you explain that, where that is and what that looks like?
Yeah, this is Stu at CMR. Yeah, there's a decorative fence that is along the northerly side of the entrance into the site. It runs from about based on the site arrows for the building footprints. If you can zoom up on Pad A, it might be easier to see. But the first, yeah, there you go. There's a sidewalk running along the entrance drive, and then in the space between that sidewalk and the drive-through lane, there's a decorative fence. It will have piers, stone piers with a black rail type fence in between the piers. The fence starts at approximately, as you turn into the drive-through to get to the order board, that's about where the fence will start. It runs towards Reisterstown Road, turns left, and again mirrors the drive-through lane as you get to the pickup window. And as you can see, the there's a sidewalk connection from the Starbucks parking area towards Reisterstown Road. It's kind of in a sandy color, just left or northerly of the three reddish depicted trees. The decorative fence ends right past where that walk connects to Reisterstown Road. Yeah, and it ends with a final pier before that larger tree as you pull out from the Starbucks drive-through lane. So that's the extent of the decorative fence that's being proposed right now.
Okay, and did you look at other locations for the dumpster?
The dumpster for the Starbucks use?
Right.
Or for the Longhorn?
Yeah, I'll just interrupt. That's that has already, the Starbucks was already before us and already approved. As noted for the Longhorn, they're using
Right,
the
I saw that.
dumpster location in the rear of the office building.
Right.
That's correct. Yep, that's correct.
Okay, I have no more questions then.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. So just going along with some of the other questions from the other panelists or comments, the moving of the Longhorn has taken away some of the frontage along Reisterstown. If I understand that, I do think that's a bit detrimental to the read of the site plan. However, I think with the nature of Reisterstown near the highway entrance, that's probably is acceptable. So moving on from that point, would like to echo just some of the comments about the walkway connections through the parking fields. It is unfortunate that that parking field is kind of vast and it has more of a, instead of infill and creating frontage, you're looking across a parking field to the new buildings. And then where we did have fairly good connectivity across, we're missing that across one of the bays where the pad site used to be. I'm wondering if that can be connected across to create more continuity of the walkways across the parking lot. So that would be off the main entrance drive. You pass the Starbucks, 1 bay, 2 bay, and then the 3rd bay does not have a pedestrian connection across. I was going to make a comment about connecting the sidewalk that leads basically along that third bay up to Reisterstown Road, but in the responses about the grade change, I'm assuming that cannot be done due to the grade changes. Maybe it's 5 feet from Reisterstown down to that sidewalk that kind of terminates along that third bay of parking. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, that's correct. The grade difference does get slightly more difficult to address as you go towards the ramp exit from I-695. So that's probably the main reason we did not try to do a second connection to Reisterstown Road walkway. The other walkway near the Starbucks is relatively flat and provides very ease of access from that walkway into the site.
That's it. Just staying on that point, I can't quite see because the trees might be obscuring it, but it looks like then that sidewalk then bends and connects closer to the bank and runs partially along the curving bank parking.
Yeah, that's correct. We wanted to give some access to those parking spaces there to walk towards the Longhorn instead of the bank, just to get them to the crosswalk towards the Longhorn. So we provided a walk connection for a few of the spaces going up around that curve.
I mean, to me, that seems a little bit arbitrary because it's only serving, what, 5 spaces or so along that location. I would echo, planning's comment to increase some of the planting along Reisterstown Road to screen that, well, to use that area a little bit more so it's not just grass. I'm not sure what was shown there, but that's not very environmentally sustainable or useful. If that could be more of a rain garden or something that would allow for more rainwater penetration, something other than grass. So would like to see some more additional and useful landscape in that new triangle that's along Reisterstown Road, as well as potentially, if there's room for it, some additional screening along those head-in spaces along Reisterstown Road. I will echo Joe's comment, Mr. Yusufero's comment about I would advocate for leaving the additional 13 spaces, and those of you who know me, I never advocate for more parking, but with the restaurant uses and the suburban, this is still a suburban location, I do think those spaces will be needed. Maybe one day they won't, but I don't, given that the reduction has already occurred, I would say to leave those 13 spaces. I'd like to just ask a couple questions on the architecture next. And maybe we can go to the black and white noted elevation drawings. Marta, I have no idea what pages those are on, but the first question I have as you're making your way towards that is for the EFIS. What is the lowest point on the elevation that the EFIS, how many feet off of the sidewalk grade is the EFIS located vertically from sidewalk to EFIS?
I believe this is a question for the Longhorn staff.
Yes. Agreed.
Sorry, I had to pull up my elevation so I could see them. It's 12 feet from the sidewalk to where the EFIS starts.
Okay, and that's the lowest point. Okay, that's good to hear. I also have questions, and I think I read this correctly, that there's rough sawn wood columns and maybe a wood canopy. Is that truly wood? And can you speak to that, the use of that?
Correct. Our entry canopy is actually real wood. It's not faux. So those wood beams on the arch as you come in and underneath and the top of the columns at where the stone ends, that's all real wood, yes.
Okay, and that's stained, or how is that treated?
It's stained.
Stained, okay. Last question on that is the manufactured stone that typically requires a dimension off of concrete, I imagine. I see, it seems like the elevations have it drawn to grade, but I don't believe that is for manufacturers. Recommendations, can you speak to that? How much distance above grade the stone is elevated?
Correct. It usually doesn't come all the way down the grade. It's usually held at, I think it's 6 inches off of grade, so it doesn't come all the way down. No.
And so then that exposure, is that concrete? Is there curb? Is there something else that, what do we see where that stone does not meet grade?
If you have exposed foundation, it'll be painted to match out the building then.
Okay. So that's the end of the comments. I'd like to ask one of my panel members to make a motion on this one. And you can make it again either as recommendation for approval, conditional approval, or need to return for a second viewing at DRP. And Sandy, that doesn't get you cuteness points or help with the disposition, but it's good to see your dog there. So panel members, who would like to make a motion? Matt, I'm going to prompt you to see if you can summarize some of the comments from the panel into a motion.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it. I mean, it seems like most of the comments are related to the parking and circulation. So I'm just speaking out loud, I guess, and this might be a question for Jennifer. Is that something that they can work through with your staff on outside of this group?
Yes, if you all wanted to do a conditional approval, pending any, resolution or outcomes, work through design with planning staff and the DRP chair. That's how we do a conditional approval.
That would be my recommendation, would be to approve with those adjustments. But I know, Cecily, you had a few of the architectural comments. I don't know if you want to incorporate any of those into the motion as well.
Okay, so as a motion, somebody needs to make the motion and list what the conditions are.
So Matt, just
and as
answer.
chair, Cecily cannot do that.
Right.
So somebody needs to step up to bat.
Right, so let me jump in here and just to answer Matt's question briefly. To answer the questions, I don't love the fake stone. I don't love how it doesn't meet grade, but in this location, I think it's fairly acceptable. I think the comments that you mentioned in terms of pedestrian circulation, landscape would be the main ones, and then if you want to include in your motion any exception to the parking in the staff report, those were the items that I noted. So I'll leave that as the prompt, but I'll leave you to make the motion, Matt.
Sure. So I would make the motion to conditionally approve, allowing the applicant to work with staff to make some of the site plan improvements as noted in the meeting. Also would like to include the comment about the site lighting to make sure that comment was reviewed. I think that came up as a safety concern. So I think those are the two pieces to work conditionally with staff on.
Sorry, Matt, to be particular, but you need to state if you can reference the staff report, but any additional comments have to be verbally stated, and any exceptions to that need to be verbally stated.
Oh boy.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. I didn't take good notes here while I was going.
So I might be overstepping my bounds, but sorry, Jennifer, just trying to move this along. There were comments to add additional landscape to the frontage. There was a comment to connect the sidewalk through the parking lot, bay 3. There was, let's see, I'm looking through the comments. I think those were the main ones. Others can chime in after as a second.
This is Shan. I would like to include a comment about the parking lighting for safety issues.
Parking lighting, thank you.
Be 0.5 foot candle minimum. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
They're going to have to meet whatever lighting requirements are stipulated through Jim Herman of DPR. So he will be doing the detailed analysis of the lighting plan. So we will make sure that the comments from the DRP are noted to him as well.
Okay, thank you.
And I think we talked about trying to improve the access along the front of the office building, along in front of Longhorn toward the bank as well.
There is a pedestrian connection shown there. I think the other wouldn't be it. So sorry, Matt, can you summarize those as listed, the foot candle, the pedestrian connection, the additional landscape, and we'll go from there to revise your motion.
Sure. Do you need me to start the motion over again or just add those to the motion?
I think it would be cleaner if you started over.
All right, let me take another shot at it. I propose a motion to conditionally approve the site plan with the following additional conditions beyond the staff report. Be to work with staff on the additional site plan concerns related to connectivity to link the office building, Longhorn, and the bank site together, and potentially to the Starbucks parcel. Include the improved landscaping along Reisterstown Road as discussed, and to work with staff on the lighting standards outlined by the county.
Very good.
Well, I gotta interject because our staff report has some very specific conditions on the site plan with relative to Reisterstown Road. We were recommending removing the parking and doing enhanced landscaping with decorative fencing. Is that the recommendation of the panel, or do you can't say that in conformance with the staff report if that's not what you're recommending? So sorry, we gotta go for this again so that there isn't confusion on the record of what is being approved or recommended for approval. So if I'm hearing you, I think I heard some discussions about some of the panel members not thinking that it's appropriate to remove the parking, but yet the enhanced landscaping. And my question to you all is it enhanced landscaping with decorative fencing like was approved for the Starbucks that we recommended continuing along Reisterstown Road in addition to enhanced landscaping, or is it just landscaping? That's question number one. Question number two would be, with the sidewalks and the connectivity, if you want to be specific, you need to state where that needs to go. And then because there was confusion by community members and questions and discussions, I think the signage needs to be addressed. So those are just some points that I'm going to just suggest for the motion.
Right. So thank you for that, Jennifer. I think those are important points to cover. I do think we need to have a quick discussion on the parking. I know that myself, as well as Mr. Yusufero, recommend keeping the 13 spaces. That would be an exception to the staff report. Speaking for myself only, I would say metal fence and enhanced landscape along Reisterstown, but let's have a weigh-in if anyone differs from that opinion on the panel. Speak now. So Matt only has to do this one more time.
So this is Joe Yusufero. I do agree with the staff report in terms of the decorative fencing. Right now, it is proposed in front of the two Starbucks and second restaurant pad. I do believe it makes sense to continue down so long as we're able to approve the keeping of the 13 spaces. The property line actually jogs in and it actually can't continue all the way down. but I think it's important to continue down in front of the 13 spaces, so long as the panel decides to approve it.
I agree with you both. This is Yan.
I agree.
Okay, Matt, third time's the charm. Want to start that motion and take into consideration the specific. I would also maybe mention the recommended 0.5 foot candles in this round.
All right, and the signage.
Signage, well, we did not talk about that. That's good. Thank you for that. I personally do not have an issue. I understand, you know, I've driven that route many times. I do think it's a little late at a decision point to make that turn. I don't have an issue with that because it's not a very urban condition or a pedestrian condition. I would recommend allowing the second pylon or support the second.
This is Joe Usafero again. I would agree with you, Ms. Bedwell. Understanding that there are 3 signs there now. And I do think that it's important to show a customer coming off of the Beltway what the sign and what the use is, combined with, I think the signs are overall tasteful. So recognizing that so long as the DRP approves it, the applicant still needs to go before the administrative law judge. I would also offer that the applicant mentioned that the height of the signs would both be the same. The first sign is significantly down in the site, so the overall height would be lower. And the second sign would be higher. So just putting that out there as a comment. I'm in support of both.
Anyone counter to that opinion on the panel? Okay. Hearing none, I will prompt Matt to give it that third shot.
Thank you, and pardon me because I've got back to school night things happening here too, so trying to juggle a couple things. I'm going to propose to have a motion to conditionally approve the site plan application to work with staff with the following adjustments and revisions. The first is to have the development team work with staff to review site access and circulation, especially the connectivity between the office building, Longhorn Steakhouse, bank parcel, and the Starbucks. The second is a revision to the staff report regarding the enhanced landscaping along Reisterstown Road. I think the recommendation will be to propose the landscaping with the fencing, but to include the to keep the 13 proposed parking spaces as shown on the site plan along Reisterstown Road. The next piece is the proposed signage. The DRP panel recommends supporting the 2 sign locations instead of the one as noted in the staff report due to the reduction of the existing site plans or signs that are on site today. And then finally, working with the county to review the site lighting to ensure that there's a 0.5 foot candle lighting requirement on the site in the future condition.
And we have a second for that.
This is Hannah. I will second the motion.
Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Very good. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, presenters. And with that, we'll move on to item 3, and I believe we will welcome Fran Anderson to our group. Given that it is currently 8:05, I'm going and that the panel has reviewed these presentations. We've had these for some time now. I'll ask the presenters to be fairly succinct and brief, assuming that we have all looked at this and hit the high points. And if we can, I would ask that we, the presenters for item 3, which is the Eastland Road lots, the Hakeem Amat residence, that you begin your presentation now. The floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chairwoman, and thank you to the panel for staying so late. Good evening to everyone. I wanted to give a special thank you to Marta, Emery, Brett, and Jennifer, who've been so helpful in answering our questions and walking us through this process. I'm Consuelo Amat, and I'm a new assistant professor of political science affiliated with the SNF Agora Institute at Johns Hopkins University. We recently, Luis, Hakeem, and I moved with our son, 4-year-old son, Adrian, to Baltimore because of my job at Johns Hopkins. And we're very excited to finally be able to settle as a family in a city, in a place, because we've been moving around quite a bit with my academic career. So we're just very excited to build our dream house in this lot and have our son attend the Riderwood Elementary School. Marta, could you please go to the next slide? Briefly to summarize, oh, by the way, we also have in the call to answer technical questions. Obviously, I'm not an expert on these things, is Fred Shekels, who is our builder from 10 Oaks, as well as Devin Leary, who is our landscape architect. So just to summarize the project, these are 2 adjacent lots that make up one buildable lot that's 2.8 acres. And would like to build a single family home here. It's located off of a proposed panhandle driveway along Eastland Road, and the property is zone DR1. We'll be showing you throughout the presentation the pictures of the state of the lot currently, as well as the proposed design of the house, working with the slope of the lot, and the wide variability of homes in the immediate neighborhood, as well as the larger Ruxton neighborhoods. We also will show you our proposed landscape plans, the exterior materials of our home, and we'll show you the site plan that Human and Road developed to minimize grading and the clearing of trees and to reduce the environmental impact. Next slide, please, Marta. Great, so this is just to show you the proposed site. It's surrounded in red. As you can see that these are 2 adjacent lots that are basically one buildable lot. Next one. And off of Eastland Road, there's a proposed driveway that you'll get to see in more detail in the site plan. Next one. Next, yeah. And this is basically Eastland Road, and where you see that car to your right is where that driveway would be going through to enter the lot. Next one, please. To the left of this wooden fence would be where the driveway would be created. Next slide. This is one picture from the lot currently, how it looks. Next one. And so now this is a series of pictures that will show you and I wanted to indicate where these houses are, just to get a sense of the wide variation in the character of homes are immediately around the lots, as well as in the larger area, Darnall Avenue and the other ones, and Indian Head. Next one. And I provided that little star for you to always know where the lots are with respect to the home that we're seeing on the right, and with the arrow directing it. Next one. Next one. Next one. This is Indian Head Road. Oh, yeah, no, go ahead. You can. Still Indian Head. Indian Head. Indian Head. This is Darnall. 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 And I think it's Darnall. Yeah. So now we get to the site plan, and I wanted to just allow Fred Shekels from 10 Oaks, our builder, to walk us through a little bit with this slide and our next one, which zooms in a little bit on the site plan. Fred?
Thanks, Consuelo. I'm sure everyone was indicated, everyone's had a chance to review this. There's a lot of line work here because there is a good bit of topography across Panhandle. We have driveway slopes of about 8 to 15% that comes down to a turnaround in front of the garage. The red X's are where we are removing specimen trees on the lot. You can see the lot is predominantly made up by specimen trees. We only went as far as to survey the ones that were in the near proximity of the building envelope. So it really there's dozens of more specimen trees that aren't indicated on this plan. The site is served by public water and septic. We are providing some stormwater management via dry wells behind the septic system for the project.
Thank you, Fred. We can go to the next slide and take a look at the zoomed in. And so in the red, you can see I think there's 8 specimen trees that would have to be removed for the project. Although my understanding, and Devin can chime in if he would like, my understanding is that we would not need a variance for the trees because we are disturbing less than, I think it's 40,000 square feet of land. So we could have an exception to that particular variance request.
Hi, Consuelo. This is Devin. Yeah, just to chime in, that's still in work. We're in review with DEPS right now with those approvals.
Wonderful. Thank you, Devin.
Yep.
All right, we can go to the, oh, go ahead. Do you want to say something else? Okay.
No, go ahead.
Next slide, please. This is our proposed landscape plan, showing existing vegetation and proposed vegetation that we would add, even along the driveway. Next slide. This is a cross section that we wanted to provide, so you get a sense of the slope and the grading for the project, and the 50 feet setback from property lines. Next slide. This is just to show you the elevation of the house, as well as the proposed external materials, including white brick or wood painted white, and some wooden accents, as indicated there. And we'll also use some hardy lap siding. Next slide. Just give more details of the front of the house. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. This is the right side elevation. So as you're coming in through the driveway, this is what you first see. Next slide. And this is from the left side. Next slide. The previous one, please. Thank you. That's the back of the house, which shows the brick towards the bottom and then hardy lap towards the top. Next slide. And this is just to give you a sense that this is a home that Ten Oaks built. And so just to give you a sense of the colors that the house will have, it's going to have this particular wooden accent. It's gonna, the brick is gonna look like this. And then it'll also have this cement window details at the top of the windows. Next slide. This is basically the type of lap siding that we would like to have, and it'll be painted the same color of the white brick. Next slide. We'll have a retaining wall and potentially 2, I believe, but Fred could give more details if people would like to talk about the retaining wall. But basically the material for it will be this, this material and that color, the pewter blend color. Next slide. We'll also have a privacy fence, 6-foot privacy fence along part of the, and you can see it on the site plan, part of the front, and it'll look like this. It'll be vertical or wood laid vertically, but it'll have the same color of the wooden accents of the house. Next slide. And this same previous picture that we showed with the elevation. Next slide. And these are the floor plans. When you enter the house, it's at a half level, and so you go down, and so the kitchen, living room, and dining room are actually on the bottom floor, and there's no basement. That's basically the basement, and so you walk out to the patio, and then you go up to the rooms. Next slide. Next slide. These are the measurements. And so this is basically the second floor, or after the ground floor, and it has the 3 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. And then you go up half a floor to the gym and the study, our office. Next slide. And then we're going to have a guest bedroom and a recreational room and a storage closet. Next slide. This is to give you a sense of the lighting fixtures that we would like to have in the house. Next slide. Some more examples of that for the back of the house. Next slide. As part of the DRP process, we also conducted, conversations with our neighbors. We had directly invited and had conversations with, there are 7 immediate neighbors that the Ruxton Association provided to us, and we directly corresponded with the ones that have the red star. We also held a virtual meeting with the whole association and with the neighbors who wanted to participate. And next slide. The green stars show you the people that out of the 7 neighbors, 4 of them came to the actual Zoom meeting that we had with the Ruxton Briarwood Lake Roland Association, Neighborhood Association. Next slide. No fee, yeah. Next slide. And then lastly, just acknowledging that we notified all our neighbors in written form by mail that they could participate to the DRP. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm going to ask Marta if there are any speakers from the public for this project who wish to speak at this time.
Yes, Ms. Bedwell, we have 3 speakers who registered to speak. We have Linda Owen, Kathleen Lane, and Michael McKean. I probably start with Michael McCann since he's representing the neighbors. Mr. McCann, can you hear me?
I can. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yes, thank you, Marta. I think it is probably the quickest for me to go first because I'll have the least to say. But I do, again, my name is Michael McCann, and I represent several of the neighbors, including the immediate neighbors on both sides, and you'll hear from them in a moment. I understand I have 5 minutes. I won't take up that 5 minutes. I'll rather have my folks speak to their issues. But I wanted to at least provide a little bit of background or context, rather, to the site and what's around it, some things that haven't been mentioned yet. And if I could, Marta, I think it would save a lot of time if I could share the documents that I've submitted to you. It would just maybe go a little quicker. Is that okay? Fantastic. Okay, I can see my video now. I'm looking for the share button. It's still not showing yet.
Mr. McCann, I have all of your documents which you send it to me, and I can share on your behalf.
Okay, I just thought it'd be a little quicker if I could do that. I have all of them in handy here. I do have the site plan as well, which some of the documents that have been referred to already. But I guess the first thing, if you could pull up, is the site plan. And I have it if you don't have it handy. Okay, great. Thank you, Marta. Appreciate it. So real quickly about the site, a couple things that I wanted to point out that have given my clients some pause rather. Number one, on both sides of the subject property, there is a stream, and I don't have a pointer here, but there are streams on the immediately adjacent lots to the east and the west. Those streams, because of the topography, runs southerly towards the immediately adjacent property, which happens to be Lake Roland Park. I'm sure members of the panel are familiar with that park. And just beyond, so at the bottom of the two lots, adjacent to those two lots is the park. Just shortly, barely 130 feet or so from the boundary of those lots and the park is Lake Roland itself. So those streams on either side of the two lots go to Lake Roland. Has been mentioned, the slopes on this site are extremely steep, in excess of 20% in some places. There are, due to the existence of the streams, there are significant forest buffers associated with those two streams that intrude into the site itself. There are at least on the site plan, as indicated, 30 specimen trees. I think Mr. Leary or Mr. Shekels has indicated that there may be dozens of them beyond the 30 that are shown on the plan. But all of these environmental constraints require variances from depths, and we're waiting on those rulings, the granting or denial of those variances right now. But they include a variance to remove a number of the specimen trees, a variance to impact that forest buffer that is there to protect the stream systems. So as I said, we've requested copies of those submittals. We're still waiting on a decision from DEPS, but the point is that this is a difficult site. There are a lot of constraints that are involved. It's not just two lots that happen to be in the neighborhood, and these environmental issues have given, as you'll hear shortly, my clients significant concerns. The other thing I would mention, there is, unrelated to the zoning regulations, there is a 50-foot building setback from the property line, the northern property line. It was imposed in the plat when these lots were approved back in the 1950s. Since we made the property owners aware of that setback, they have moved everything southerly away from that building setback. I still perceive there to be things in that setback that may require further discussion, but as a result, everything's pushed southward, again, into the forest buffer, towards the streams and towards the Lake Roland. So with that, I'll stop talking and allow Kathleen Lane, who is an immediate neighbor, who also happens to be an architect, and speak to you about some of her concerns, particular to things that the DRP is reviewing. So if Kathleen can be unmuted.
Yeah, I'll just remind for those who weren't here at the beginning for the intro, the DRP panel doesn't have purview over stream buffers, forest buffers, steep slopes, setbacks, et cetera. Those are all being reviewed by other agencies within the county. Our purview is design related, bearing in mind context and being compatible with surrounding context, materials, including architecture, landscape, et cetera. So just bear that in mind as the other folks have their 2 minutes time. Some aspects that have already been mentioned are not within DRP's purview. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Bedwell.
So this is Emery. So the time for Mr. McKinney is up. So yeah.
Okay. Is Ms. Lane available, please?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. I'll let Ms. Lane speak for herself, but I know I was going to show her some of the things that she's going to speak to, some photographs and other things. So Ms. Lane, you'll just have to direct your request to Marta for the things that you want to see or show the panel.
Will do, and thank you. Can you enable my video as well, Marta? And I want to thank Ms. Marta and Ms. Bedwell and other members of the panel. And we are immediate neighbors directly to the south, directly to the north along the long border of the property. And my husband and I are both architects, and we are new neighbors to the community. And with all due respect to those proposing the project, it's our strong view that the design of the house is not appropriate in site design, architectural form, site size, massing, and height. It's not compatible with the other homes on Eastland Road and the immediately surrounding area of Ruxton Hills, which we don't define as the rest of Ruxton or Darnall. This area predominantly has 1- and 2-story ranch-style houses, which are low in profile and designed in deference to the surrounding wooded setting of our community, which provides its defining character. With a much larger size of 3 stories and over 5,000 square feet, this house has an extra story and up to double the square footage of the surrounding homes. This is a builder's stock design, which is not appropriate or sensitively adapted to the specific conditions of this site. This site is incredibly beautiful and unique, and it deserves a much more responsive and sustainable design. A house in a setting such as this should lie lightly on the land, nestled carefully into the existing landscape and surrounding trees with a minimal footprint to avoid disturbance of the landscape and removal of trees. The height and massing should be much lower to defer prominence to the trees and forest. The materials, light colors, are typical to a suburban context, and they don't harmonize and blend with the wooded setting. In the section drawing, you can see that the proportion and massing of the design with the very steeply pitched roof gables also stand out very starkly in the wooded context. Even if 15 to 20 foot trees as shown are planted as buffer, the 35-foot high house will stand out over these. The view sheds of the entire tree canopy from our home and the surrounding neighbors will be lost, along with this defining character and the gaping removal of nearly all trees on this 26,000 square foot site.
Time's up.
Okay, thank you very much.
Laura, can we show some photographs, some of the things that Ms. Lane I wanted to show as she was speaking?
Mr. McCann, your time is up to speak. We have to move on to the last person who has. They can direct Marta to show exhibits if those have been submitted.
Okay, very well, thank you.
I guess I'm up next. My name is Linda Owen. I'm another neighbor on Eastland Road. I have lived here with my family since 2012, and I am an art conservator at the Baltimore Museum of Art. This is wanting to present some of the context on Eastland Road. So next slide, please. This is the street. As you can see, it's heavily treed and wooded. Next slide. These are all of the adjacent houses to the proposed lots on Eastland Road and also joining onto Indian Head. Next slide. This is 1906, single story. Next slide. 1908 is not even visible from the road. Next slide. It's a classic mid-century design house. Next slide. This is 1900, my house, also a mid-century single-story house. Next slide. This is 1901, again, mid-century classic single-story house. Next slide. Closer view of 1901. Next slide. This is the cul-de-sac with the proposed entryway. This is actually on my side of this cul-de-sac. Next slide. And this is the proposed driveway. You can see how heavily wooded it is. Next slide. The site entrance again. And this is with the trees fully in leaf, which shows how dense the forest is. And next slide.
That's all I have. There is another.
Okay, these are probably some of Kathleen's. The other point that I wanted to make was that all of these houses are between the 2,000 and 3,000 square foot area, and the proposed house is nearly double all of the directly adjoining neighbors. Another point in the presentation, 2 houses were shown twice with 2 different addresses.
Time's
so
up.
That was okay. Thank you.
you, community members, for presenting your points.
Cecily, I'm sorry, we had one additional speaker request.
Very good.
Cynthia Dagnall. Marta, if she's on, could you unmute her?
Yes.
Can you
Yes.
guys,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I am a neighbor. I live at 2019 Skyline Road, right down the street from this house. And I just wanted to add to the comments already made that they haven't discussed the view profile from Lake Roland Park. As you could see in the original design presentation, first off, the lot is located, as they showed, adjacent to Lake Roland Park. Lake Roland Park, as is defined in the county master plan, is one of the most important pieces of green space and public green space in Baltimore County, and one of the only places of public green space. And you can refer to the county master plan, the 2001 and 2010, to read about the importance of Lake Roland. But the largest view profile of the house, as you can see during their design proposal, is actually the back side. And the back side is actually the size that will have the most impact design-wise to the neighboring community, because given where they are locating the house and moving it further south down the hill and moving it into the forest buffer, it means it will have significant view profile from Lake Roland Park. And the 2010 master plan and the 2001 county master plan, the Ruxton Riderwood master plan, both address issues of development in Lake Roland Park and adjacent to Lake Roland Park. And they both address that every effort should be made to protect the view profile into the park. So not only will it change the wooded nature of the neighborhood, and the house doesn't fit into the wooded character of these smaller single-story homes, but it also affects the view profile from the park. And so now this very natural place where you can walk and see only trees, you're going to see a large house in the park.
Very good, thank you. We are now going, I'm going to ask Marta to go through the
Excuse me,
steps.
Ms. Badwell, we have one more speaker.
Okay, sorry, they're incoming. Very good. We'll move on to that, and I'll just let you prompt when you're ready for the staff report.
We have Mac and
So hold on. We don't do staff reports for residential projects, Cecily.
I'm sorry. Thank you for the reminder. Okay, we'll take that last community comment, then move to discussion.
Yes, we have Miss Meg Millard and Mr. Jack Millard. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Can you? Okay, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, we reside at 1906 Indiana Head Road, adjacent to where the construction will be if this project is approved. And the sketches don't show any trees to be planted alongside our side of the driveway, and the long driveway that would come from the cul-de-sac down to the property. And so that was a concern and objection of ours, because right now there's that part of our lot is lined with trees, and of course all those trees will have to be cut down for the driveway from the cul-de-sac to the lot to be built. Secondly, there's mention of a guardrail, and we don't have any details on that, whether it's to be made of metal, like a highway guardrail along the driveway, or what the aesthetics of that object would be along a portion of the driveway. Thirdly, although there's a mention that approximately 8 specimen trees will be taken down, according to some arborists, the remaining specimen trees on the property have such an extensive root system that more than likely there will be collateral damage to another 4 or 5 specimen trees, and they are likely to be affected and have to come down. Those are the extent of our concerns.
Okay, thank you. Very good. 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 Thank you. Good, thank you. Barring no other folks signed up, we'll move on to discussion. I will first go to Fran Anderson. I'm hoping you've joined us, Mr. Anderson, at this point and can start off the discussion.
I am here, and I want to thank everybody for sticking around. We moved the residential projects to the end of the agenda from my schedule, so thank you, everybody, for doing that. Normally, we'd be long gone by now. I'll never do it again. So I have some questions and some clarifications. First, on the drawings were submitted and sort of described as schematic drawings. Are these the final drawings that have been submitted and are being built and permitted, or do you anticipate some revision? Why was it described as schematic drawings? And maybe that's for Mr. Shekels, I don't know.
Yeah, I can answer that. So we do all of our designs in-house, but we're not registered architects. What we do is we work with our clients, get a design that works for them, works for their budget, and then we take it to an architect for permitting. So within this set, we do have within the presentation, there were pages from the architectural plans that will be submitted for permit. They're not in yet. We really wanted to get the feedback from this board before we submit it for the permit.
Okay. It just raises the concern of changes to the drawings after we actually see them, and I just want to make sure that if you're presenting something here today, it needs to be what there can't be any changes other than those that we're requesting or are part of this process that we haven't seen.
That's exactly right. We anticipate no changes unless you request them.
Okay. I do want to look at a couple of things. Maybe we can take the one comment from, and I apologize to whomever that was, about the entryway and the landscape plan through the entryway on the driveway there, I should say. It is a little bit devoid of any screening along that wood fence line there. I did notice you had a privacy fence, but it stopped. Would you all be open to providing some additional screening on your landscape plan in response to the comment of your neighbor? I guess it's Mr. Millen.
Yes, so we didn't, yes, to answer your question, yes, we would certainly entertain that, but there are some relatively newly planted, I don't know if they're arborvitae, but they're probably right now 10 or 12 feet onto their property acting as a screen. So it's that the screen on the large property, then a split rail fence, and then there's a little planting strip that we could plant a buffer, but I'm not so sure it's necessary.
Okay, well, I don't necessarily need to get into means and methods here. If you guys can work with your neighbor to come up with something that's mutually acceptable, then that would probably suffice from my perspective on that.
You got it.
With regard to the removal of the specimen trees, can you just clarify one more time the number of specimen trees that are being removed, and if anything, in terms of the rear of the house, there was discussion about the view and the view shed from the park in. If any of the specimen trees from that end of the property are being removed. I see you don't have them marked with X's.
That's correct.
Can you take
go ahead, Devin?
Yeah, let me take this question. So yeah, we obviously there's quite a few specimen trees on site. We surveyed all the specimen trees within the project area. There's many more to the south, heading down towards Lake Rollins, which will not be affected by the project and are to be retained. Obviously, some specimen trees will need to be removed to get access to the property, but the intent was to try to preserve as many as possible. So, there's existing forests, a lot of forests between us and the park property that's to remain, and it'll also be placed within a forest buffer easement. So that's a non-disturbance area in perpetuity.
Right. And with regard to the buffer and the streams, I'm sure Mr. Schaefer and Likens and everybody else at depth will deal with those issues.
That's correct.
Can you go to, you have a plan, there's a section sort of elevation showing the height of the new house. It's a drawing not to scale, and then there you go. So looking at this, I see this. Can you give me the height of the proposed house? I don't know if Mr. Shekels, you have that.
Yeah, hang on 1 second. Yeah,
35 feet, I think.
35 feet.
35. And the first floor elevation is what? 360 something?
368.
Yes. So on the site plan, you see an FFE of 362.5. That's actually what we would consider a typical basement elevation.
Yeah.
So the first floor is going to be about 11 feet above that.
Okay. All right. And is it 35 feet from the basement elevation or the first floor?
That's so if you look at,
It looks like it's the basement.
It's no, it's basically the elevation from the side of the garage to the peak of the roof.
Okay. And do you know what the elevation is at the neighboring residence that's shown on this drawing?
I'm looking at the topography. It's about a 398.
Okay. All right. One thing I'll say, I'm not a landscape expert. It seems like most of what the landscaping is that you're putting in on this side of the house is a little smaller than you're taking out, mind you. Perhaps there's some things that you can plant there that are a little bit more effective screening to your house for the neighbor, even though, while I do have some concerns about the height of your house, it is well, below your neighbor's elevation, right? So it can bear a little bit of extra height, but I do have some concerns. And, between that and the screening maybe being a little bit different, maybe somebody can make some recommendations here on the panel other than me about potentially changing the landscaping to help with the issue of removal of trees and the prominence of your house. As to the house design and elevations and such, the left and the right side are pretty devoid of any windows. They're kind of just big masses. But I don't know that the left and the right side are particularly in anyone's individual view shed. It seems to me that the front and the back are more at play here. So I guess I can reserve any comment on the left and the right. I do think that the height is a bit problematic. Marta, can you put the front elevation up? What would be the chance that the second floor could be brought under the roof, Mr. Shekels, as opposed to a full attic space above there? I don't know is there a third floor on that?
I'd have to work with that those gabled sections with the Ipe wood accents are kind of one of the design features. So if you bring the roof down, I'm curious. I'm having a hard time myself figuring out how that roof system would work if we brought it down. One thing that we could look at is possibly hipping that right side, the upper roof and that lower roof to kind of change the mass of the roof a little bit.
Right.
Can I interrupt and ask a question a second? Because there's a difference in this roof line compared to the illustrative elevation, the color elevation. The roof line is flush with the peak of the gable of that highest roof. So which is the correct design? Marta, can you go to the color elevation there?
The architectural plans, I mean, frankly, can be whatever this panel recommends. The architect took a little creative liberty to add additional storage space in that second floor. But we can go back to the conceptual drawing if you like it better.
Yeah, I think an effort to try to clean that up and bring that down as much as possible would be really helpful. With regard to the color, we tend not to dictate too much color here. I do understand that this is going to be painted brick, correct? And hardy?
That's correct.
Right. And right now the color is going to be a white.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, Marta, you can show the picture of a similar home in terms of color schemes if you go to a couple of slides.
The other direction.
Some more, or was it the other? We're good. No,
That's okay. I mean, I understand the color. I would just say this. If there is an option to look at, it is fairly stark and it is in a wooded area. If there is an option to look at sort of a more, let's call it natural occurring color in the wooded area, and you can think about that. I'd like to get other people's opinion on the panel on that, and how they feel about it. There are lots of houses in the neighborhood that are white, and I get that. So there are examples, and to the comments from the neighbors about, what is the immediate, vicinity of the house and where should we draw our design, sort of inspiration and requirements from. Fortunately or unfortunately, we tend to allow, a little bit wider radius than just the street, because that is the nature and a fairly eclectic nature of not just, your neighborhood in Darnell, but the entire Ruxton, Riderwood area. But I do think, to summarize, some care and attention to maybe the landscape plan for some more screening, cleaning up the roof and examining the possibility of bringing the roof height down, and looking at the color and maybe toning it down to some more natural color or tones from the white would be a good idea to address the neighbors' concerns. And I think that's all I have at the moment.
Mr. Anderson, I'm going to go to Ms. Raw first, second, I should say.
Sure. So thank you everybody for speaking, and I agree with pretty much all the points that Mr. Anderson just made. Another one concern that I had was when I was looking at the section on page 28, have you done a drainage study or soil study for the site? Devin, do you want to speak to that, or Fred?
No, we have not.
I think that's something very, very important for you to do before you even look at the design right now, because I'm concerned that the house is going to be flooded.
Well, there is a drainage study. So let me speak to this. Right.
Okay.
So yeah, so the site plan was, so it's graded, and obviously we have quite a bit of slope to deal with, but it slopes from north to south. So it's graded so that we'll pick up the water, off, coming to us from the north side, which is around the house to the rear, where our stormwater management facilities will be. We also have very prominent swales on either side of the site, east and west, which eventually becomes their first order streams. There's spring heads, which drain down to Lake Roland. So, so it'll follow the natural drainage patterns, once it gets around the house. The plan is to pick up all the roof leaders and whatnot and get them into dry walls. Those are, further south, just below the septic system.
Okay. Okay, understood. Yeah, that's about all the questions that I have. Thank you.
Let's move to Mr. Sharma. Did we lose Mr. Sharma?
Mr. Sharma, you are muted if you speak.
Oh, I guess you can hear now.
Yes.
Okay, so does this neighborhood have a homeowners association? Okay, and if so, these concerns could have been discussed and looked into with the involvement of neighborhood association.
Yes, we held a meeting
I'm
with,
wondering what would be the role of neighborhood association if there is any.
my
Mr.
understanding.
Homeowners
Turbo, this is
association.
Jennifer Nugent from the planning department. All residential applicants have to meet with the Ruxton Riderwood, or they facilitate or schedule a meeting facilitated through the Ruxton Riderwood Lake Roland Area Improvement Association. So there is a community meeting that occurred for this project.
Mhm.
And so that's what the applicant reported back upon, and Mr. Fran Anderson, who sits on this panel as a residential representative, also is made aware of that meeting and any concerns expressed at that meeting. So that is how that plays out.
So, Mr. Nugent, if I'm not mistaken, the homeowners association, they have certain rules and regulations that they comply. They ensure that every home is in compliance with those rules and regulations.
Well,
So
there's
probably
no
that would be,
homeowners, there's really no homeowners association in terms of what you're speaking to. The design review panel, this is it, so to speak. I mean,
okay. Okay, I got it. So besides that, I think Mr. Anderson made pretty good balanced comments. I concur with him. I don't have any additional comment. Generally, homeowner association, they dictate a lot of things in what goes on in their neighborhood.
I think there's a community association, not a set HOA with their own covenants. Mr. Reynolds?
Just one question. It's related to the buffering and screening. Had any consideration been made to just mirror the floor plan so the garage would go to the western side of the site plan to reduce the amount of impervious area and increase the amount of buffer between this house and the adjacent property owner to the top side up the hill? Other than that, I agree with all the comments.
Yeah, this is Fred. We looked at it a number of different ways, and the issue with flipping the house essentially is the driveway slope became too steep. The steepest part of the driveway is coming around the turn, so you're running 20+% slopes into the garage, which obviously is just not the best design out there. So it forced us to have a garage right.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying.
Let's go to Mr. Khan next. I'm not hearing Mr. Khan. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry. It was hard to hear you. I recognize that the difficulty of this site, and but I would say that the thing that strikes me the most is the height issue, and particularly being viewed from the Lake Roland side of this property. And it's probably, 45 feet tall, or maybe even a little bit more on the downhill side. And, I think that what Fran Anderson said, I think is exactly right. I mean, everything you can do to lower the height of this building is significant. It's probably, twice as high as any of these other buildings that are immediately there, even though some that are across the street are far larger. But I think, this will be very dominant being seen from the south side. And I think that to me is a major concern. And that's it.
Mr. Yusufero. Joe, are you with us? Are you muted, unmuted?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I have no comments. Thank you.
Okay, you took me by surprise. I guess I'm up then. Okay, so I would just kind of echo Fran's comments on the lowering the roof, adding additional landscape buffer, especially between the lot, I believe to the north, the long lot, the abutting, and as well as the along the driveway. I hesitate to ask the applicant to change the color, but perhaps a light linen that's just a shade off of stark white would help to address the concerns of the neighbors and blend a bit more. I do like the aesthetics of the white painted brick, but perhaps a linen color would still go with those aesthetics without being so stark in contrast. Lowering the roof as shown, I think, in the colored rendering, and perhaps even more would be another recommendation that I would echo. Beyond that, I would just say, that from the south to, I believe that's the direction where the lake would be to the south, if that's correct. I believe there is substantial existing tree coverage and distance. So Devin, I'd like you to just address that if you could and talk through if there was any analysis done from that viewpoint to address the concern the other neighbors have raised.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So yeah, you're correct. The site is at the rear of the site or towards Lake Roland is completely forested. Dense forest. I have been down at the low point of the site looking up. In the summer, you will certainly not see the house. In the winter, with the leaves off the trees, yes, you probably will have a filtered view of the rear. But again, there's considerable distance. The forest buffer is substantial. It's I believe more than half of the property. That's going to be retained as as forest easement area. And then as far as going into existing forest and doing additional screen planting, that's really not practical. So it's really taking advantage of the existing vegetation. It is a steep slope. We do have a substantial rise from Lake Roland up to the home site. But again, that forest is to be retained.
That. I know you already addressed along the driveway. Could you give your thoughts on if it's practical to add additional or taller trees that would help to screen that property to the north?
Yeah, sure. So what we were trying to do here is we knew that the neighbor immediately to the north was had concerns for screening, and the fee strip that we have to get into the site is 20 feet wide. So we don't have a ton of room to provide screening, obviously. So the driveway was offset to the west to provide a little more screening to the east. Okay. So that's why we have the trees on that side and some shrubs and whatnot. We could certainly, center the driveway and provide some planting on both sides if the neighbors would prefer that. We would certainly like to work with the neighbors to provide something that, they would find palatable and hopefully make everyone happy. But again, it's, through that stretch, it's a tight spot, so we're a little limited in room. If we could work in conjunction with them to provide, to have some planting on their property that would work with our proposed planting, that would be nice. And then along I guess what's our northern property boundary where we do have some more room for planting, we just have a mixed buffer planting of mixed evergreens, some deciduous understory canopy trees. What I didn't want is a solid wall of arborvitae or whatnot. This is, the site is more of a naturalized feel. So that's what we're trying to propose along that edge. Putting larger trees in, at the time of installation is one thing that we can look at. Unfortunately, there are some big trees there that are going to have to come down, but we really don't have a choice. The driveway pretty much has to go where it's shown because we're pinched between the property line and the environmental constraints of the forest buffer.
Right, understood. Thank you for addressing that. I would advocate for larger trees at installation. The only other question I had, sorry, one other question and then one comment. The width of the driveway is what along that area that parallels the northern lot?
Right. So
our standard. Oh, go ahead, Devin.
Go ahead, Fred.
Well, I was just saying our standard 12 feet, and that's what's shown. But if it made sense to go to 10 to allow for a little bit more buffer and plantings along that driveway, we could do that.
Okay, thank you. I would advocate for that. Although 12 isn't enormous, but I think 10 would be good to both limit the impervious area of the site as well as to accommodate the larger trees that we were just talking about. There was a question from the adjacent property owner that talked about was the retaining wall or a guardrail. Can you address that, please?
Yeah, I can take that. So as you come down slope on the driveway, we have the hard left. Okay, so that corner we have a retaining wall below on the low side. So for safety and snow, we just want to make sure that we have a guide rail there, just in case a vehicle does lose control. We're not going to be going over the wall.
What is that material?
Yeah, so we don't have it detailed yet, but I envisioned a timber guardrail.
All right, thank you. The last comment I'll make is the boxed rake returns, I don't feel are as historically appropriate to a rake return that has some profile. But given the distance from any street view in particular, or really the view from adjacent properties, I think that's a limited detail. So I'll end my comments there, and I'm looking to Fran to coalesce the various comments and questions and make a motion. If I can prompt you, Fran, for that.
Yeah, I do have one question. In the goal to keep the project moving and to have the homeowners moving forward, we've asked for a bit of a study on the roof, right? So to bring it down, would it be appropriate? Maybe this is a question for Jen. I think we've done this in the past for Jennifer. Where a revision is brought back to the staff, but with the consultation to panel members as part of that revision. Is that something we can do?
The conditional approval is submitted to planning staff and confirmed with the DRP chair. And then if the DRP chair chooses to do so, may share it with other panel members for consultation.
Right, because I think it's important, and it's kind of a very open-ended thing at the moment with a lot of specificity, and I think it would be appropriate to do that. So let me see if I can do this then. So what I would move is that we approve the project conditionally based upon the following: that there is a study done on the roof height and the possibility of lowering the roof and cleaning up the roof detail on the drawings that will be submitted to the staff and reviewed. That the landscape screening to the north, and I guess we'll call that the northwest neighbor along the driveway, will be revisited with the neighbors to see if there's something more desirable to the neighbors. And then that would be revised. the color of the house. They'll examine the possibility of altering the color to something a little less stark white, perhaps the linen as was suggested. And then confirmation of the material on the guardrail as timber. And the driveway width could be reduced to 10 based upon the landscape discussion. And I think that's it. Did I miss anything?
Do we have a second for that motion?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
And aye. Okay, very good. Thank you. That motion passes, and we appreciate people's time, and we'll move speedily on to the last and final presentation, number 4. Number 4 is 329 Southwind Road, and presenter, if you are waiting and not currently asleep, would you please present your project? And as stated before, assuming we have all, as panel members, have had this submission, so I would urge you to expedite this, touch on the high points and the most salient points, and then we'll move on. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman Bedwell, and I can. I've been told I can take a hint, so I will do that. So my name is Chris Knight. I am the homeowner and my wife of 329 Southwind Road. Just a very, very quick backstory. We had good friends that lived in this house prior. My wife and I are originally from the area, Ellicott City, kind of northern Baltimore County. We always loved visiting them. I've lived in Federal Hill for a number of years, had to move down to Northern Virginia for a number of years for work. With COVID, had the opportunity to work remote, move back up here. And at the same time, they had to move to Connecticut, and it was perfect timing. So we actually purchased their house in an off-market deal. It's kind of like we were stealing their dream because they always wanted to do what we are proposing to do. And, we're very excited about this project. As I noted in our summary, this is really the culmination of 10 years of weekend drives around Northern Virginia and Baltimore. We really think this is a unique neighborhood. We think we've worked hard to design a house that really fits in with the aesthetic of the existing houses. There are some older houses that I think, very much fit with our design. Without being too cliche, we've kind of tried to design a modern farmhouse without being too over the top and looking like something from, one of those shows that you see with barn doors everywhere. No offense to barn doors. They're lovely at times. But, I think if you reviewed our project, so our house is at the corner of Northwind and Southwind Road. I would say the most significant thing that we wanted to do, and we have been in touch, through various methods with, let me just pull this up. It's like the Planning Commission. The current house faces Southwind Road with a side load garage on the right side of the house. Given our existing plans, what we would like to do is do a driveway cut in off of Northwind Road, which is actually very similar to what the neighbor right across the street does, or the existing house. They have a door facing Southwind, but their driveway cut in with a side load garage is off of Northwind. So we'd like to do that, based off of the rectangular nature of the lot. We are unable to do that on the other side of the house, but we think we can provide a really nice aesthetic. And we also it's very important to us actually to have a side load garage. So we have that front profile of the house facing the main road that, doesn't have a garage. Other than that, I don't think there's anything, we have obviously labeled the plans as being, reverse, because the plans do not currently show the garage on the left side of the house or on the right side of the house, but the site plan does show that. And again, try to design a pretty basic house. We're going to use hardy plank, Marvin windows, going to have stone up the foundation line. And then I guess, we do have a number of slides that really show all the floor plans. I don't think that the panel, based off of my experience, has too many comments on the interior aspects of the house. We just included them. Marta, if we want to move pretty quickly, we had a second title slide it said exterior aesthetics is the title. I mean, we can certainly page through these and, take a quick look at the, the front elevation of the house. You know, again, long porch, there's that stone elevation that I talked about up to the foundation line. And again, we would flip the profile of the house. You know, pretty standard grading, I think, and nothing, you know, we want to have a walkout on the side of the house there. I don't think there's anything, again, windows I think are pretty standard. We want to have this deck and a screened-in porch off of the house that I think will, you know, complement things that we've seen in the neighborhood. But if we actually, you can skip ahead a number of slides. There's the side-load garage that we're proposing that will face Northwind Road. And there are actually another number of houses along Northwind that have side-load garages that face that road.
Excuse me, Mr. Knight,
Yes.
what slide you would like me to show?
If you just want to click through, it's probably at least 5 or 6 ahead. There'll be a title slide that says exterior aesthetics, and that's where I wanted to show. Yep. Okay. So if we go to the next one, Marta. Yep. So these are just some existing, this is the existing home that we would plan to tear down. We can go to the next one, Marta. And these are a couple of examples of kind of where we've drawn inspiration both from the neighborhood and our own personal preferences. This house is actually about a quarter mile from the project. Has a lot of very similar characteristics in that we have a long front porch, white hardy plank, and then black window grids for the front of the house. And they do have a 3-car side load garage. We can go next, Marta. This is, real quick, not that it matters, that previous slide. This is a house in Vienna, Virginia, where we just moved from. Again, a lot of similar aesthetics. You know, different lot. They had a whole separate unit for the garage. Can you go next, Marta? We were asked to include kind of like what we envision our front door and light fixtures to look like, given how important that is for the profile of the house. This is what we know. We kind of want to have bold light fixtures on either side of the door with side lights. And, you know, we're still picking out, we think we want to do an alder wood door, but this was the closest example that I could find of some light fixtures, and, you know, general with the transom window up top is the inspiration that we're thinking about. I'm sorry, was that a question? Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought I heard something. And then, okay, can we go to the next one, Marta? I'm sorry. This is a house about 4 units down, at the end of the cul-de-sac, really, of South Wind Road. Very similar. It was built and sold in 2019. Again, they use, you know, elements of stone facade and hardy plank siding, you know, in the foundation line to the stone foundation line and a side load garage. So that's, you know, count 1, 2. That's 3 houses away from our proposed project. And if we could go to the next one, Marta. And again, this is actually the direct next door neighbor to the previous. It's 321 versus 319. Again, a similar house. You have this, you know, siding with, we're not going to have shutters under the current plan, but kind of this, you know, again, modern farmhouse with siding and the side load garage are some of the major themes that we wanted to provide. Okay, can we go to the next one, Marta? Again, just another example. This is actually, oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Again, I think, again, we just want to show the panel a couple of the places where we're drawing inspiration and really making an effort to fit into the aesthetic of the community. So I'm certainly, again, oh, and then I guess I should talk about some existing trees there, Marta. There are several existing trees, none of which are specimen trees, based off of the reviews that we have done. They all range in 1 to 2 foot in diameter. They are pine trees for the most part. And we've noticed, you know, that they're starting to lean, particularly the one there at the corner of Northwind and Southwind. We would definitely have to remove that one due to the fact that it's leaning, and that's where we want to put our driveway cut in. And then some of these other trees, again, we're a little bit worried given we're building a slightly larger house than the ones there. There are some tall pine trees that have a shallow root system, and we do have an landscape architecture plan that will replace those existing trees, which we think will be some very nice screening. So again, no specimen trees in there. I think we'll be replacing them with a landscape aesthetic that looks really nice. And I think that's the end of any comments that I wanted to share directly with the panel. So I'm certainly willing to open it up to any questions. And then also I should have introduced him. Steve Schneider is our builder, who we've been working with on this project for a while, is on the line to answer any technical questions about materials or anything else.
Thank you for that, Mr. Knight. Marta, are there any speakers signed up from the public for this project?
I don't have anyone. Jen, Brett, Emery, do we have anyone that you may have on your end?
No.
Yeah, I don't have anybody.
Okay. Very
And all, I'm sorry, Chairman, but all I should have said this. All I want to say is that we have contacted all of our immediate neighbors, and we've made an effort to kind of go around and knock on doors. We've only been living up in the area for about 2 weeks. We're going to continue to make that effort. We haven't been able to directly contact them, but everyone has been mailed copies of our plans, so they know what we're trying to do.
Mr. Anderson, we'll start with you directly.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Knight, I really did not get any feedback from the Ruxton Riderwood Association. So just to clarify, there's not been a meeting of neighbors, but they've been notified. Did you guys try to schedule a meeting, or you've just been knocking on doors, or what was that process?
So we did notify all the neighbors via mail, basically with this presentation, and then we did notify the Ruxton Riderwood Association. I'm not sure what they have been called. I didn't know if there was a requirement to schedule a meeting with them.
Well, typically they try to schedule a meeting with neighbors. It doesn't mean people come. It just, depends on their interest and all. So
we did work with that. We did notify that association, I think over a month ago. I don't believe we received any feedback from them, but Steve could probably fill that in potentially.
Okay. Failing anyone being here to actually, speak on behalf of themselves or the neighborhood, I'll assume that you've done what you've needed to do. I can follow back with the association quickly after the meeting and just verify. One comment, I don't know who's responsible for this, but I would highly suggest, and maybe it's on a future project, you do not send in drawings that say reverse plan. You want to make this as easy for us as you possibly can. And by not having your site plan and your architecture plans coordinated, it makes it harder. And we've all sat where you guys are, and we all do on a regular basis because we're all come from that same thing. It just makes, you want us to be, make it as easy as possible. And it invites a level of scrutiny that you don't really want. So please don't do that again, whoever sent those in. Look, this is an interesting project, just like the last one, right? You are greatly increasing the size of the house. You have a split level home that is going to become a much bigger house. You have a corner lot, which is fantastic, but you also have 2 front doors then, right? So you've got to be really, really careful with both elevations. The biggest thing I'm going to say is we have approved, and I've been a part of it, the homes on your street that you showed that are very similar to yours. And in fact, in some cases, they may have been a little bit bigger. So in that regard, I find the house is consistent with other things we've approved, despite the fact that you're at the corner and your site is much higher up in relation to your neighbors than the ones at the end of the court, right? Where their sites are lower and the homes are a little more hidden, and they do have, side loaded garages that are also hidden. That being said, I don't really find any grounds to ask you to change your plan or reduce it in terms of the mass of the building. I do think the landscape plan and the screening on the north wind side is really important, right? Because that's your second front door. And I'm not a landscape expert, so I'll let others comment on that. But so really those are my only comments. So I really don't have anything specific for you guys to look at or change.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fran. We'll go to Joe first. Mr. Yusufaru.
Similar to the last one, I have no comments.
Thank you, Joe. We'll go to Mr. Sharma next.
I don't have comments.
Okay, Mr. Reynolds.
No comments either.
Okay, everyone I'm assuming is just tired. Ms. Ra, any comments?
I do not have any comments. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Khan.
The same. I don't have any comments either.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you, panels. I think that maybe it's not a matter of tiredness. I just think that this doesn't have any large concerns. From the panel, the materials I think you're using, and from my viewpoint, I think you're using natural stone veneer. Correct me if I'm wrong. The details of the rake returns to me are good and what I'd like to see. The trim around the windows, etc. Really, the comment or question I have is a really basic one. The columns, what material are those? I just could not read that.
That is something yet to discuss down the road. We like to use a PVC or a boral trim, but we just haven't got.
Fly ash or a solid PVC?
Yes, we just haven't gotten to the detail of that yet.
And so those are square columns, correct?
Yes, it'll be a 6x6 that gets anchored into the concrete, which gets hurricane strapped to the roof, and then we apply the PVC or the fly ash boral trim around it. We can paint them white. We can paint them a dark color. We can even kind of give them a stained look. So that's just a level of detail we haven't quite gotten to yet.
Speaking of that, so I appreciate the openness, but we really want to go with what is the trim color, and then that should probably match the trim color. If it's white, I would suggest white. But.
Well, a lot of and Chris, you can jump in if you want, but most of the farmhouses are going with more of a stained look, black. They actually are doing the columns black to match the windows. But I've seen it both ways. I've done it both ways. So it's purely something I'd rather have Chris jump in and answer.
I can pretty confidently speak for my wife, who's putting her daughter to bed right now. They'll be white.
Oh, there you go.
So the trim will also be white then, and is that correct?
What trim was that? I'm sorry.
The trim around the windows and other.
Yes, it will be white. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the windows will be black. They're doing a really nice upgraded Marvin window, which will be black. It's a wood.
It's a grid line.
Fine. We're not just asking about the surrounds around the window, the header. Okay. So I do not have any further questions. Again, I'll turn to Fran to make the motion, since I cannot. I'm probably the only one who made a comment, but that would be my, again, I'll just restate, the columns are as stated by the applicant, PVC or fly ash. All trim is white.
Okay. Yep. Second. And before I make a motion, Mr. Knight, I am going to highly suggest that you get your architectural plans and your site plans coordinated. There will be details that you'll need, and to have a proper quality control on those, they should be coordinated. So don't begin building without that. That's just my friendly recommendation.
Can I interject for a minute, Fran? This is Jennifer from the planning department. I'd like to clarify a couple of points. Mr. Knight was eager to get on this agenda for this evening and was insistent on being put on the agenda. And so in that vein, I think this package is somewhat incomplete. Additionally, we had mentioned to him several times that he did need to schedule a meeting with the community. So in light of what happened at the last residential review, I would strongly suggest that the panel recommend he reach out to the community again and get something on the record from the community.
Jennifer, just to clarify, is that a requirement to put forth the offer of a meeting?
We always suggest that they reach out to the Rexham Riderwood Association to schedule a meeting through them to act as a liaison. And then typically the director reports to Fran as to when that meeting has occurred.
I mean, we did reach out to them and we got no response.
When did you guys reach out?
I gave the dates to Marta. Hold on, I even sent her a,
You sent an email when you said that you are trying to reach out to them, and then you left a voice message. That's the latest
yes.
email that I have from you, but that's,
And how much more do we have to, what more do we have to do to reach out to them?
When was it that you reached out to them?
It was about a month ago, around August the 10th. We notified all of the people we were supposed to. We were supposed to notify the Baltimore Sun and a couple other publications, and that's at the same time, that's when we notified the the association.
Okay.
Well, notifying of your project is different than requesting a meeting. So the question is, did you contact them directly to request a meeting with the community?
I would have to go back to my notes. I don't know exactly the communications that I made back then.
Well, I think just to move this along, Fran, I think you can make that part of the condition to recommend a community meeting. How about that?
Okay, so let's try this. I'll make a motion to approve the project in the following conditions: that the homeowner reaches out to the association again and requests a meeting with neighbors. And that meeting should take place before final approval. Any results of that meeting should be brought back to the staff, and they can decide if there are concerns that should be elevated to the chair. I would also, the condition that the, sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second, that the drawings, that the homeowner submit the corrected, coordinated drawings that coordinate the architectural with the site plan to the planning staff. And then the last comment is the column trim color is white PVC or fly ash. I guess that was the comment. Was that right? So those are the three things. Just quickly review: meeting with neighbors, coordinated drawings, trim color.
Can I ask a question about the plans?
We have a motion on the table, so I suppose you can. It's a little bit out of sequence unless Jennifer has an objection. I'll allow this question, but then we need to move on with the motion.
If the plans have been approved by the panel here, we don't need reverse plans to build. We build houses every day with reversed plans. I just want to make sure I'm clear, because it's a huge expense to reverse.
Sorry, you're breaking up a little bit, but let me just cut in here. So the motion that's on the table is a conditional approval based on the requirement of the panel to have reverse plans to coordinate with your other submission documents.
Got it.
Okay.
Should we also request more specific information about the materials, including the roof and any of the?
That was included.
I believe that was included in the submission. So again, we have a motion on the table. I'm going to ask to see if there is a second, or if there's further amendment.
Second.
Very good. We have the second. Call for vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 And aye. Very good. Thank you, everyone, for this evening. Let's see. I think I'm supposed to formally ask for a motion to close the session. Do I have a motion to close this? And if there's anything else I forgot, Marta, speak now, because I don't see anything else on my script.
No, I think you're accurate, Cecily. Thank you.
Very good.
I'll chime in. This is Joe Yusufer. I just wanted to commend Cecily for a job well done. Thank you for leading this meeting. And I'd gladly make a motion to close the meeting.
Second.
Second that motion.
Thank you all very much for hanging in there. Glad we got through all 4 submittals and we are officially closed. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night.